is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated. Let's see. A weather delay led to a possible moment of crisis for the Cowboys. A giant disappointment in Seattle. And I'm not talking about New York. And a team flies high in Santa Clara, and it's not the 49ers. Oh, all of that is upcoming on Total Football Talk. Welcome to Total Football Talk. Hard-hitting, grind, action, news, and fun, just the way you like it. I am one of the co-hosts of this program, Cole Johnson, a.k.a. the Mad Scientist, and the EP of all EPs. And I'm joined, as always, by the other co-hosts of this program, Mr. Commander's Ground Report, Mr. D. Willie in the Evening, Mr. NRL Sports Debate. He also is known as D. Willie, my man, Drew Willingham. How you doing, my brother?
Hey, I'm doing great this morning, my man. We had one epic weekend of football in the NFL and CFL. Looking forward to talking about that with Brian McCarthy this Friday as well. But today, the Father Show is here, and Helene let me come back this week. So I'm glad that the weather decided to hold up. So there is power today, so I can be here with you.
Well, yeah, you were thoroughly missed last week, and I'm glad everything is good with you now. And yes, I'm glad Helene and its damage has passed, and now we can get down to business. Well, before we do, pass along greetings to Victor Locke, V like A3, or the man that we call Victor.
Yes! Didn't get my yes.
He says, good morning to the TFT tribe. I bow to the big game hunter of Dunster Pelicans worldwide, Sensei Drew Willingham, and the EP of all EPs, Cole Johnson. Well, thank you.
I hope you heard my yes.
Yes, I did.
I was excited because I was like, please click the button.
And that goes to the Ed McMahon of the Snowman Morning Show. That's one Mr. Victor Locke. Glad that you're here. And all over Norway, Sig Diggy says, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good afternoon to you, sir. I'm glad everything was good with you.
Well, good afternoon.
And without further ado, let's get to the action, shall we, in opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Ready.
All right, now we start the action last Monday night, and there were not one, but two Monday Night Football games. We'll start with the one in Detroit first. Some history was made. I won't say all the way history, but some history was made between the Seattle Seahawks and the Detroit Lions. We had Jared Goff, 18 for 18. 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. Oh, and he also carried the ball twice, or -2 yards. One of those -2 yards came in a safety, but I digress. Which that to me was the only mistake he made in the game. He even had a reception for 7 yards and a touchdown. That's where we start. In the 42-29 victory of the Lions over the Seahawks. Now, David Montgomery, not all that great on the ground, 12 carries for 40 yards, but he had a reception for 40 yards in the air and a touchdown. He also had a touchdown on the ground as well. Jameson Williams, who's becoming a bigger presence on the Lions passing game, 2 receptions, 80 yards and a touchdown. And of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he did not have a big game receiving, but that touchdown reception that Jared Goff had, St. Brown was the one who threw it. Kirby Joseph on defense, 5 solo tackles, tackle for loss, a pass defense, and a pick of Geno Smith, who was his arm had to be tired. 38-56, 395 yards, a touchdown, and that said interception. He also carried the ball 5 times for 38 yards. Kenneth Walker III, who was out for, I think, a couple of weeks, he came back, didn't touch the ball as much on the ground as I think he should have. 12 carries, 80 yards, and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns on the ground. He also had 4 receptions, 36 yards in the air. And DK Metcalf, 7 receptions, 104 yards, but he did have a lost fumble. All right, your thoughts on this game between the Lions and the Seahawks, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think this broke a 6-game losing streak the Lions had to the Seahawks.
It did. And the biggest thing I would say that really hurt the Seahawks would be the turnovers. You look at what Geno Smith did with the interception. Yeah. You look at the lost fumble by DK Metcalf. I mean, those 2 things right there, they lost by 2 possessions in the game. They literally lost by 2 touchdowns. Right. So had they
and that's what did it.
Kept those 2 turnovers and, converted into touchdowns there, they would have won by a point. But coulda, woulda, shoulda is basically the story of that. I mean, Jared Goff, he didn't throw a lot, but he was perfect. I mean, 18 of 18 on the day, nearly 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, like you said, was a big contribution. The fact that they were able to establish the run enough to where they had at least 10 plus carries with David Montgomery. He did have 12 carries, 40 yards. It's not a lot, but I've always had the theory that if you can get at least 10 to 12 rushing attempts with your primary running back, you've established the run enough to where you can set up play action, RPOs, and get the ball in the end zone for the most part, or at least set up your kicker to kick field goals. And that's what they did in this game. Jared Goff didn't need to throw 54 passes like Captain Ayahuasca did recently, which we're talking about, but he threw just enough to help contribute towards moving the chains, setting up other plays, and this team scored 42 points in the process. So good on the Lions for doing what they did.
Yeah. I really do. I really do enjoy what the Lions offer in terms of when they do establish the run. They are a much better team to watch than when they don't. And we got a chance to see that in the loss they had at home against the Bucs, where they didn't establish a run. You had Goff throw it 55 times. And, yeah, he got numbers, but he also turned the ball over too much, and the team just was out of sync. They were in sync in this game, and they went to the bye for a 3-1. I'm sorry. The Seahawks, they dropped to 3-1, and we'll talk about their fortunes this past game later. But, congratulations to Goff for throwing literally a perfect game. Never thought I would ever say that for football. Their Monday night game.
OMFG.
Yes. The Titans, they traveled down to South Beach to play the Dolphins. OMFG is correct. 31-12 was the final score. The Titans cruised to a boring victory over the Dolphins. Will Levis, 3 out of 4, 25 yards, a touchdown. He carried the ball twice for 5 yards. He had to lead the game in the first quarter, though. And in his place was Mason Rudolph. He threw 9 of 17 for 85 yards. And the team actually seemed to perform better. I digress. Tony Pollard, 22 carries, 88 yards, a touchdown on the ground. 2 receptions with 20 yards in the air. Nick Folk basically was the star of the show. 5 of 5 field goals with a long of 53 yards. And Tyler Huntley,
Snoop Huntley.
The backup du jour, and now he's backing up Tua and Skylar Thompson. 14 to 22, 96 yards, 8 carries for 40 yards on the ground, a TD, and a. Your thoughts on this game?
I've started to call Will Levis blasphemy in motion because that's what it looks like when he's playing out there on the field. It's absolutely terrible watching a Titans game. I know it's great for you. Yeah. I mean,
I'm loving it.
You're thriving in this moment.
I love it
when you're seeing what they're doing. But at the same time, it is blasphemy in motion when you watch Levis on the field. It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. And you had to have Mason Rudolph come in to clean things up. I mean, he did well enough. I mean, he completed half of his passes nearly, but, and didn't turn the ball over, which is always great.
Right.
But besides Nick Folk, Tony Pollard's showing how much the Cowboys really miss him because had the Cowboys had him last night, which we'll get to that, here shortly, like, they would have been able to establish the run more, and they wouldn't have had to rely on last-second heroics because they would have been able to establish the run a little bit more. But we'll get to that here in a little bit. Tony Pollard, 22 carries on the day. I mean, that definitely overshadows what I was talking about with the last game and establishing the run. Between that and setting up, Nick Folk to have those 5 field goals, you wouldn't have been able to do that without Tony Pollard establishing that run. So good on the Titans at least for having that. Because had they not had that in this game, they would have lost. And, I mean, but at the same time, you're playing the Dolphins who can't even catch a cold right now. Tyreek Hill not showing up on there because he doesn't have a reliable quarterback to throw on the ball. I would have thought that they would have made some other moves besides Tyler Huntley out there. You could have brought Ryan Tannehill back. We already saw what he did with Tennessee, which regardless of how much we kind of dislike Tennessee to the point of the Cowboys, you could argue that he would have been a better option than Tyler Huntley, but I digress. I mean, the Dolphins are an absolute dumpster fire right now, and for all we know, they could have made that move on purpose because their plan B, if Tua can't come back, is maybe to tank for one of the top 3 picks in the draft next year, and you will have some decent quarterbacks to choose from between Quinn Ewers and then you've also got Shadur Sanders. One of those 2 quarterbacks could fall to you. That could potentially be what's going on here. They made that move on purpose. I'm going to go ahead and call it now, 5 weeks into the season, because I just don't see why you would bring in Tyler Huntley as a reliable option as your quarterback to start when we don't know how long Tua is going to be gone, if he's never going to come back at the same time. So we shall see what happens with the Dolphins, but right now it's not looking good.
Well, both teams after this game, they're 1-3. The Dolphins fall to 1-3. The Titans improved to 1-3 because this is actually their first win of the season. Oh, and I'm sorry. The preceding thought process of Drew talking about the Dolphins front office sliding for Shadur is brought to you by the letter.
That's the button we're missing on Fridays.
Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that Drew's take is an L. Actually, I think there's some merit to it. I'm saying the Dolphins front office philosophy is an L if that's how they're thinking. Oh, my gosh. But, yes, both teams are 1-3. The Titans, thankfully, did not grace my TV this week. They're on a bye. Thank the Lord.
Give me 48 hours. I'm turning that into a clip.
Oh my God, from Monday to Thursday. And this would have been the game of the week. There was another one that was just a little bit better. The Buccaneers, they went to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to play the Atlanta Falcons. This game went into overtime. The Buccaneers were up 30-27, but with a Younghoe Koo 54-yarder to get them into overtime, well, Kirk Cousins took over. Well, let me say this again. Kirk Cousins took over the whole game, but he definitely took over in overtime. 36-30, the Falcons, they beat the Buccaneers in overtime. Kirk Cousins, 42 of 58 for a franchise record 509 yards. And this was Matt Ryan night, to me, the best quarterback the Falcons have ever had. So on Matt Ryan night, Kirk Cousins sets the all-time record for single season, a single game yardage mark for a quarterback. 4 touchdowns and a pick. Easily the best game he has had since he's been a Falcon. Drake London, he was the main receiver, 12 receptions, 154 yards and a touchdown. Darnell Mooney, who basically was a pickup that they were hoping that he would do some things. He did in this game. 9 receptions, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, I'll get to Young Wei a little bit later. Baker Mayfield, he wasn't bad. He just didn't have many opportunities. 19-24, 180 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He also carried the ball 6 times for 42 yards. So he did his job. It just wasn't enough, and the Bucs defense just didn't come to play. All of them didn't come to play. Some did. All of them didn't. The Bucs offense, they did amass 160 yards on the ground, and it was basically running back by tandem. Logan Hall on defense, like I said, there were some who did come and some who didn't. 2 sacks, 2 tackles for losses, and 5 QB hits. The Bucs defense as a whole, they gave you 4 sacks. And Levante David, he gave you 6 solo tackles, a pick, and 2 pass defenses. Chase McLaughlin, 3 of 3 with his leg, with a long of 53 yards. But Young Wei Koo, 3 of 5. Although he normally is reliable, and he was when he needed to be, he did miss 2 key field goals in the fourth quarter, though. 3 of 5, and I mentioned the long for 54 that brought the game to overtime. Your thoughts on this? I'm about to say something that it sounds oxymoronic. A Thursday night football game thriller between the Buccaneers and the Falcons.
Man, what a game this was. I mean, like you said, to start this off, had it not been for the Bengals and Ravens, more than likely, this would have been easily the game of the week. I mean, sorry to give you a spoiler alert, like, Damon, but at the same time, guys, I think you all know that that's where we were going if we didn't choose this one, because I had to reach out to Cole last night, like late into the night as the Steelers and Cowboys were wrapping up, and asked, because, I mean, it was just that close. I mean, it was literally a coin flip for me. That's why. Yeah. And he and I are on the same page. As soon as he made that choice and sent that to me, like, I was like, yes, I was excited to see that, because it was the right choice. And this one, mainly because of the miscues, the Falcons, it took them too long to come back. Like,
I agree.
The way that they were doing, you look at how many yards Kirk Cousins had. I mean, yes, they did that on Matt Ryan night, and that was great. But still, the fact that he had 16 incompletions in there, it kind of was concerning for me when I was watching that game. I mean, the Falcons, it was not looking great throughout the majority of that game. They were barely hanging in there, and then they pulled it off right at the end. I was at work when this game was on, and in our office space, we had just gotten TVs put up there not too long ago. We didn't have cable set up in there truly yet, so I had to take my Roku player in there. But we had the whole team in there, like, huddled around one TV, because we didn't have all 3 TVs going on. We only had one, the one by my desk. So I had the Roku player on, had the game up, and I even put a little money on the game and DraftKings, I'll even admit, and I put it on the wrong team because I thought the Buccaneers were going to win. And the Buccaneers played to the point at the end to where I called them what I used to call them back in the day. I can't call them that on the air, but take the B out, put an F in there, and use your imagination. That's what I used to call them when they were not playing well. And they expletive it up on that day. I'm doing the best I can for the radio and for my editing time later tonight. So when you think about everything that happened with this game right here, that's pretty much, it sums it up best, because the Buccaneers didn't do terrible, but the defense let them down more at the end by letting Kurt have his way at the end of the fourth quarter. And also in overtime, things just happen so quick, because if you get a field goal, the other team gets a chance to match it or score the touchdown for the win. And the Falcons in one play just basically change the entirety of the complexion of the game by doing what they did and got that quick touchdown. So good on the Falcons, good for Kirk Cousins. He's definitely proving that he's worth the money at this point. And, good on him. I'm still mad that he's not doing it for Washington, but hey, we'll get to them here shortly because the good things have finally come to that team. But I've got more to say about that as we get into that part. But yes, good on Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, especially at home on Matt Ryan night. Matt Ryan deserved to see a game like that at least end because the one overtime game that he is historically part of didn't go his way because the defense let them down really bad with 25 points given up. You already know how that went, but it worked out because we got his coach in Washington.
Oh my gosh. Oh my! So while my brother is poking fun at all things Falcons at the moment, both teams ended up being 3-2. The Buccaneers fall to 3-2. Poor Bucks, and they go they lick their wounds. As for the Falcons, they improved to 3-2, and more importantly, they actually now hold the first place banner in the AFC South since they have in 4 days beat their biggest arch rival and then beat the Buccaneers. So now they at 3-2, they lead the NFC South.
Hey, hold up.
Yes. Sir.
So I just happened to look over at the comments for a second.
Okay.
Did we attract your boy here? Stefan in the comments.
Oh, Lord.
Looks like he might be.
Bring
him up here. Bring him on up here.
You mean Diggs BTW1? Hey, what's up?
The Cowboys. Trayvon, that's what's up, man. I'm glad to have you out here in these streams this morning. I hope that's you. Let us know if that's you or if it's a fan. I mean, if it's a fan, it's still cool. But if that's cool, we just talked about your brother.
But yeah, if it's Trayvon, congratulations. That's right. And congratulations last night. We're about to talk about your brother eventually too. But but both teams are 3-2 in the NFC South. Well, let's go on to Sunday. And we will start our London affair. And that's this between the Jets, the visiting team, taking on the home team, the Vikings. So yes, this is a Vikings home game that would be in the Meadowlands in the Twin Cities. It is not type of game, but the Vikings, they go up to 5-0 with a 23-17 victory over the Jets. I'm sorry, sir. Give me just a moment. For those of you who want to say, should we apologize for Sam Darnold being the stud now? I will put this up to you. The Vikings won, and I have a 14-for-31 performance to show you. What apology do we need to make for Sam Darnold? I'm sorry. I digress. Sam Darnold, 14-31, 179 yards, an interception. Oh, and then along with 5 carries, 11 yards. And this is your MVP we should apologize for. Be real. Justin Jefferson, he gave you 6 receptions for 92 yards. Now, that's an MVP candidate. On defense, Andrew Van Ginkel. I'll give you the tip of the cap, sir. A linebacker giving you a 63-yard pick six. Whew. Cameron Bynum, he also had a pick. And a Stephon Gilmore sighting. He actually gave you the game-sealing pick. And glad to see you, Stephon, actually still playing. Real Richard, he basically was part of the I'd say a lot of the offense for the Vikings in terms of scoring. 3 of 3 with a long of 54 yards. Garrett Wilson on the other side, 13 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. On Jets defensively, Brandon Echols with a pick. The Jets defense, they sacked Darnold 4 times. But back to the offense and Aaron Rodgers, the man that was supposed to put the Jets into Super Bowl contention and knock off the mighty Chiefs to be the AFC Kings. 29 of 54, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I just gave you all 3 of the interceptions he threw. Your thoughts on the 23-17 Vikings victory in London?
Hey, like you said, for Stephon Gilmore, happy to see what he's doing over there with the Vikings. I mean, that was a big pickup they made just before the season started. And if you think about it, over the course of now, this is the 4th consecutive season. He was only with 2 teams going into 2021, the Bills and the Patriots. And then over the past 4 seasons, he's kind of become a journeyman. Like, if you think about it, because he's been with multiple teams since the 2021 season, because you look at the fact that the Patriots let him go in that year, and then he went to the Panthers, goes from there to the Colts in 2022, was with the Cowboys last year, and then this year finally gets another home with now the undefeated Vikings. The Vikings would have lost their first game this year had it not been for, I'm going to go in the words of Kyle Nash, Aaron Charles Rodgers and his blasphemous play, because he threw 3 interceptions. And you look at that last one to Gilmore, I think the ayahuasca had some effects in this game because he threw it right to him. I mean, he did kind of have to jump down and get it. I mean, at the same time, it wasn't like right in his hands. He did have to work a little bit for it, but at the same time, you should know that someone like Stephon Gilmore on that side, you're basically fighting fire with fire on that point, and it's going to explode in your face. And that's exactly what happened. You threw your 3rd interception on the day. And, besides that one interception, you can't, even though you want to put it solely on the hands of Aaron Rodgers, the fact that the Jets didn't establish a running game here, and this is something that we've been talking about throughout the past 5 weeks here. Garrett Wilson, but this is the first week we could say that he actually looked like he was a part of the receivers, is actually part of the offense, because he's been looking lost out there, like a little lost puppy for the first 4 weeks. This week, he actually looked like he belonged on the team. More so, he looked like he studied the playbook before they actually showed up. But the fact that they can't establish a run with Breece Hall, like with Breece Hall be out there, and especially with what he did last year without Aaron, the highlights of what they had last year was because of Breece Hall, and that's the only reason why they won the games they did last year. They're struggling this year for a variety of reasons. One, they don't have Hassan Reddick, and they brought him in there to be a big part of the defense. And you look at the amount of points that they gave up, 23. It's not horrible when you think about how many the Vikings could have put up with the explosive offense they've had this year. And they rattled Sam Darnold to the point to where he completed less than half of his passes. I mean, they're doing their job there. But at the same time, they'd be better with Hassan Reddick. They'd be better if they had Aaron Rodgers' boy, apparently, and we'll see in the next week or two if they bring him in. Because if they have the 1-2 punch with Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, that would be huge. But right here with this game, the 2 biggest things that I would say that stood out to me as to why they didn't win was the turnovers, the decision-making by Aaron Rodgers throwing into tight windows like he normally does and wins. But he's been losing this year because, one, he's throwing less than 250 yards on average a game, which is what he did again this week. And when you have more interceptions than touchdowns and scores and can't establish a run, it's a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what happened in this game.
But apparently Devontae Adams has a hamstring pull.
That's hogwash.
He has no talk on hamstring pull. All right. My plea to Devontae Adams. I know you put up a lot of numbers with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Don't go to the Meadowlands. You're going to be thoroughly disappointed. You're going to be thoroughly disappointed because you hit the nail on the head to me. What frustrates me about this team is you got a 40-year-old quarterback. You want to have him throw the ball almost 60 times, but you don't want to establish the run at all? Really? And you got Breece Hall, who is not a slouch as a running back. He's not a slouch as number 1 running back. and you don't want to establish the run. Why? And you got a rookie running back too that seems to be like a battering ram, and you don't want to establish the run. Why? Uh, that is what makes no sense to me. And this is what I call a wasted effort. The Jets defense, they give you 4 sacks. Like you said, Sam Darnold, he didn't complete half his passes, forced first 2 turnovers from a lost fumble and a pick. And they only gave up 16 points because I know you say, well, you says 23, Colt. Well, 7 was a pick six. Do the math. 16 points this defense gave up. Now, in my book, if a defense allows that few amount of points, it is on the offense to win the game. And Rodgers with them 3 picks and not establishing the run, not Rodgers, but Hackett not establishing the run. That is why they lost the game. And that's unfortunate. Now they fall to 2-3. They could have been a contender. Well, they still might because they play the Bills next Monday, but hey, who knows? As for the Vikings, they coast. I think they have the bye next for them at 5-0. And if I'm not mistaken, I think now they're the only undefeated team left. Well, congrats to you all again. That defense is absolutely killing it. Ooh, man. And now actually I'm looking forward to Vikings games because of that defense. I really am. As for the Jets, I agree with you. They're missing Hassan Reddick. Although they're doing good, they're missing him. Wow. All right. Nah. Nah. I think we're gonna do this. The Panthers and the Bears. This thing was so bad, you're gonna see these Pelicans reel through for a good minute. 36-10 was the score. The game even was not that close. Caleb Williams, he had a wonderful performance. Actually, this is the best game he's had. Now, he was not Dustin Pelican worthy. You would not see him in this picture. 20 of 29, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 5 carries, 34 yards. He did his thing. Best game he's had as a pro thus far. DJ Moore, 5 receptions, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kevin Byard on defense, 5 solo tackles to pass defense, a tackle for loss, and he also had a pick of the Red Cannon Andy Dalton. 18 of 28, 136 yards, a pick, 3 carries, 3 yards, and a pull. So I thought Andy Dalton was your answer. I guess he wasn't. Chuba Hubbard. He had a pretty good game. 13 carries, 97 yards, a touchdown. But he did do and when I do that, that means he fumbled. 4 receptions for -2 yards. And on defense, Trevin Wallace was 10 solo tackles, who I would say is basically the only person I would not put in the rolling dumpster Pelican reel that you just saw. Your thoughts on the Bears demolishing of the Panthers?
It's all I can really do because of the Panthers are so bad. And it has to deal with their front office and their owner. And it's just when we thought that we couldn't see anything worse than the Cowboys and their owner / GM, or, even though the Panthers have a GM in place, you could definitely see where that person's kind of like a puppet, and you have the puppeteer being the owner who knows absolutely nothing about the game of football. Looking at the amount of coaches that they're still paying that aren't on staff, and at the players that have come and gone, that you see ones that we thought were washed, like Darnold and Mayfield, having success with other teams. It just goes to show where the real problem lies. I mean, Stephon Gilmore on the defensive side. There's several different players that we could argue that we were saying a couple of years ago were washed because of what they were doing there. And we had it wrong because it wasn't the player, it was the atmosphere. So, and the atmosphere stemming from the top in management. So and their choices, regardless if the coaches were bad. They were making the wrong choices by what they brought in, and it's still bleeding over into today as the results are showing very, very highly. So right here and now, you and I were talking about it earlier in the green room. The biggest thing that I want to point out, especially when you look at the rookies this year, Caleb Williams, in my opinion, has been performing underwhelmingly. But this game, he kind of bounced back a little bit. But I still take it with a grain of salt, because if you're bouncing back against really, really bad teams, it really doesn't impress me that much, because you really need to be showing flashes of this. Even if you're losing to a better team, you still need to show flashes of what you were doing great in the games you were playing bad teams. So good on Caleb Williams for throwing for 300 yards and completing 20 passes and having 2 touchdowns and not having any turnovers. But you had help from DJ Moore. You also had help from your defense, and you also had help from the other team's quarterback, Dalton, who couldn't even throw for 150 yards in the game and had a turnover. So besides all that, Chuba Hubbard was the only highlight for the Panthers on this day. I mean, Trevin Wallace with 10 solo tackles, that's great. But at the same time, even though Hubbard had a fumble, I don't really more so put this so much on that and the turnover that the Andy Dalton had at the same time. It's the lack of contribution by the remainder of the team and the Panthers, because they're not equipped with the right players all around. And the Bears were able to jump on that, because the Bears, when they're playing good teams this year, have shown what they really are. And I can't take them seriously after a win like this, when we've seen other teams beat the Panthers and then get smacked around the next week. So I expect for the Bears to drop off a little bit at some point, and I hope it happens during week 8. But you know why I feel that way, and we'll get into that more later. But here and now, good for the Bears to get the win yesterday, but the Panthers are looking like they're going to be another top 5 pick in the draft next year, at least.
Yeah. Kudos. Kudos in your message. I could not agree with you more about the Panthers front office. It is horrendous and horrible. Dare say that the Bears are actually 3-2. Wow, it's hard for me to even fathom myself saying this. And they have a rookie QB. But yes, I agree with you on your Caleb Williams point too. He needs to show flashes of this brilliance when they're playing really good teams, and then we'll get a better understanding of what his contribution to the league will be going forward. But 300 yards against an NFL team, even though it is the Panthers, that still is a good thing. And you actually completed 2 or 3 of your passes. You went over 66% completion rating. I'm happy, and didn't turn the ball over. Hey, that's a start. Hopefully you can continue to do that. The Panthers, meanwhile, they're 1-4. I still can't believe you all won. No, I'll take that back. I still can't believe, Raiders, you actually lost against them.
And the Bears are doing this with an offensive line that's absolutely...
That's terrible.
Because they are.
Yeah, that offensive line is terrible. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Drew. Ooh, wow. Oh, well, no, this I will play. In a great bowling shoe ugly game that had a decent point in drama, the New England Patriots, they beat the Dolphins 17-15. Oh, but a second foot on an end zone catch hit the chalk, and the touchdown got denied. Dolphins beat the Patriots 15-10. Tyler Huntley, who had a performance this past Monday, yesterday, again, 18 of 31, 194 yards, and a pick. Jalen Wright established something on the ground, which is something that I have not seen. We have not seen the Dolphins this year until yesterday. 19 carries, 86 yards. Raheem Mostert helped him out as well. 19 carries for him and 80 yards. 2 more receptions for 18 yards in the air. So that's 98 yards combined offense for Mostert. It's good to see him back. And the 86 from Wright, the 80 from Mostert, that contributed to the 192 rushing yards the Dolphins amassed against the Patriots defensive front. And the special teams, not to be outdone, Jason Sanders, he gave you 3 or 4 field goals with a long of 54 yards. Jacoby Brissett, who said that Tyler Huntley in the battle of backups, there's no way you could do that bad as me. Hold my beer. 18 of 34, 160 yards. He had a carry for 10 yards, but at least he did not give you a pick or a fumble. So we have that. Would have had a touchdown, but again, like I said, second toe, the heel hit the chalk. Christian Gonzalez for the defense, he gave you a pick. Your thoughts on this? I don't know what you call this type of game between the Dolphins and the Pats.
This is probably the first game that I can truly look at for the Patriots and say that it's getting to the point to where they really need to start considering putting Drake May in there. Because if he's as good as they say they are, and why he was picked so high in the draft, you look at what Jaden Daniels is doing in Washington. You don't always need to sit out for a year. Sometimes if you are the guy, in my opinion, if you're taken within the top 5 to 10 picks in the draft, the franchise is saying emphatically that you're the guy, right? So if that's the case, Jacoby Brissett's been proven for years that he's a really good and reliable backup, but not somebody you can depend on each and every week. And if you're going to lose to the Dolphins after the way that they've been since week 2 when Tua has been out and the way they've been playing so inconsistently, regardless of one play with the chalk line stuff that you were talking about when we first started this segment right here, you can't always rely on the last drive and the last play of the game to get the win. It worked out in the Sunday night contest last night, but it's not going to work out here when you have 2 terrible teams playing each other. It's like you've got a flash in the pan here, a flash in the pan there of why you're a professional player, but your team overall is terrible, and you can't rely on the last second plays. And it came back to bite them in this game, that being the Patriots. If you're going to play like that, and you're going to be playing you're still building momentum in a rhythm within your team and trying to build chemistry, you might as well do that with the quarterback that you just drafted for the future, because that's what other teams like the Commanders and Bears are doing, and it's working out for one of the 2 teams. Well, technically, I guess you could say it's working out for both, because the Bears have a winning record right now, and they probably weren't playing like this last year with Justin Fields, and Fields is doing better with the Steelers regardless of how last night ended. Overall, he is. So you put him in the right place, and if Drake May is truly in the right place, then you might as well start him. Unless you're trying to send the message that your offensive line is that terrible that you're afraid he's going to get hurt. I mean, again, look at Washington and what they did. They were one of the worst offensive lines last year, and I was giving them shade all during the offseason, but they proved me wrong with the way they've started this year, and I'm happy to acknowledge myself as being wrong with that. Right here and now, the Patriots need to get on the bus of figuring out what they're going to be doing, because we already understand their season is over as far as contending for a Super Bowl, but you at least need to give the fan base and your front office some hope going forward by seeing the true potential in the future with what you have at your quarterback position.
Yeah, I agree with you. If they want to have this be a classroom year for Drake May, I understand, but this team is not going to be much better in 2025 as they are this year. So you have that going for you.
Yeah, and you'd be better if you played your quarterback now to get some experience, because it's obvious that the Commanders and the Bears are doing the same thing. They're playing for the future, but you got to get those reps in order to be ready for that point. And if you sit out a whole year, it's not always going to work out for you like it did for Pat Mahomes, because you're not playing for a coach like they have in Kansas City, in New England. I mean, just being real. So you might as well just put him out there at this point and just see what you got. See if it was worth drafting him that high.
Well, they may have to draft someone else that high too coming into next year's draft. Right now, they are at 1-4. The Dolphins, they improved to 2-3, and it's still looking bleak without old Tua. And Skylar Thompson too. Oh man.
Yeah, if Tua was there, they would have got lit up if he was healthy. But
Yeah.
that's all. I digress.
Yeah, definitely. Now we get the chance to talk about your team. The Washington Commanders, they hosted the Cleveland Browns, and they literally had their way with the Browns, 34-13. And I think they were being kind to give the Browns the last 7 of those 13. I'll hold Jaden Daniels up till later. Austin Eckler, 6 carries for 67 yards on the ground, 2 carries for 30 yards in the air. And I got to give you credit. Austin Eckler has actually been a big part of this offense. And he's been a big part of the ground attack, which that I was not expecting. I was expecting them to be a good receiver, but he actually is getting some yards on the ground. And speaking of yards on the ground, the Commanders offense, they gave you 215 yards on the ground. I think it is very safe to say that they pretty much are the team that establishes the run no matter what. And that does my heart good. I'm glad there's a team that actually understands that running is important. Terry McLaurin, four receptions, 112 yards. He did lose a fumble, but he was spectacular with a couple of the plays I saw. He also had a carry for 2 yards as well. Frankie Louisville. Oh my gosh, this dude was all over the field. 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits. I think he had a fumble recovery too, and 2.5 sacks. I mean, the dude was just all over the field. Bobby Wagner, a sack and a half, a tackle for loss, and 2 quarterback hits himself. Deshaun Watson. Well, I'll go back to the Commanders for a second. Deshaun Watson, 15-28, 125 yards and a touchdown. 3 carries, 14 yards, a lost fumble, and a pouting fit. But I will digress. Jaden Daniels, I would have to say this is probably the worst performance of his NFL career thus far.
Yep.
14-25, 238 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. 11 carries for 82 yards. Now, you're probably saying to me, Cole, that doesn't sound too bad of numbers. I know. But remember, this guy came into this game completing over 80% of his passes. So, yeah, this is probably the worst performance, but I think he will take that, and I think Commanders fan will take that, even though it was their performance like that. It came with a 21-point victory. The stars of the show to me was the Commanders defense. 7 sacks. 7 sacks. That defense was flying all over the field. Your thoughts on your beloved Commanders going up to 4-1 now, beating down the Browns?
It's been great to watch so far with what they've done. I mean, he set the rookie record now for yards inside of 5 games on the season. He's got 300 rushing yards, Cole, in 5 weeks on 57 carries, averaging 5.3 yards per game and 4 rushing touchdowns with a long of 34. He does have 2 fumbles, but didn't lose any of those 2 fumbles, which is absolutely phenomenal for him. In 5 games as well, Jaden Daniels has 101 completions for 131 attempts. It's insane. He's only had 30 incompletions the entire 5 games for a completion percentage of 77.1% and has thrown for 1,135 yards so far. Now, the one alarming stat that I want to throw out there for him is he has 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. 2 interceptions I'm not really worried about because he's a rookie inside of 5 games. The one thing that is concerning is the fact that he only has 4 passing touchdowns and he has 4 rushing touchdowns. He needs to get that number a little bit more up there. But every single one of those 4 touchdowns, even the one to the offensive lineman, have been absolutely beautiful and phenomenal to watch. And it's great flashes of the pan for what we can see for the future. The consistent part here that's been great over the past 4 weeks for the Commanders is their defense has been evolving over those past 4 weeks and getting better each and every week, whether it's been here on Total Football Talk or Commanders Gridiron Report. I have been stressing the fact that the secondary needed to improve and the defense needs to step it up, and they have done that in the past 2 weeks at least. The 2 weeks before that, it was a little ugly, like the win that they had with the Giants, the battle of the field goals. You were seeing some flashes. The next game against the Bengals, they were looking like dumpster Pelicans on defense, but that's where Jaden Daniels really lit it up on offense. Right. Last week when they played the Cardinals, they basically, started to take that advice in there, and the defense was improving. And the offense was doing their job, a little suspect on certain things. This week, they regressed a little bit offensively, but the defense carried their backs this week. So even though, like you said, it was the worst performance of Jaden Daniels' NFL career so far inside of 5 weeks, it's okay when you have a defense that's doing what they did. They cannot rely on that each and every week because they were playing a dumpster Pelican team in the Cleveland Browns this week, okay? This upcoming week against the Ravens, you cannot rely on that type of play because you will get smacked around. If the defense plays the way they did, they'll be able to contain Lamar Jackson in a decent way to where they're not scoring 38 points and 41 points like they did yesterday, okay? But the offense needs to get back on track. And we saw Jaden Daniels, that one interception that he threw, he looked like a rookie and in certain parts. But the best thing, and you and I have talked about this a couple weeks ago, and especially after we saw that first win against the Giants, the first of 4 wins, how resilient this kid is and how he can bounce back on certain things. We don't see that a lot in rookies. We saw it with your quarterback last year with C.J. Stroud in Houston. But it's not that often we see a quarterback with a poise like this that can bounce back on the next drive. And it's great to see. It gives you a great feeling for the future. The people that are saying that the Commanders are going to make a run in the playoffs this year and win the Super Bowl are smoking crack because they still need to make more moves in the offseason, in my opinion. It's great to see what they're doing. They have 17 new starters on the team this year, which is the most in the NFL, which is phenomenal. You think about the fact that you have 22 starters between offense and defense, and you've got 17 of those being new. That's in seeing the results like this is phenomenal. It just goes to show how much this team needed an overhaul in the past seasons. They finally got it in 2024. If you're a Commanders fan, you are excited about what you are witnessing right here and now. But please, 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 do not drink the Kool-Aid because it is a team that has not been truly tested yet because they have not played a team that, regardless of their record, most of them are all losing records, if not all of them have losing records that they've beat so far. They got the true test this upcoming week when they play the Ravens, and they've got several other tests. This is only 5 games into a 17-game season. If they're 7-1 by the time we get through week 8, I'll start drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit then because I'll be in attendance for that game when that happens in week 8 when they play the Bears. But they're not going to be 7-1. Because of the next 2 opponents that they have. They're going to lose at least one of those 2 games. I'm just being honest. And if they surprise me and win, I don't even know what I'm going to do next. But I will say this. I'm happy with what I'm seeing. But if you're a fan of this team, just take it with a grain of salt right now. The schedule's on their side through 5 weeks. And the caliber teams you're playing are subpar in comparison to what you're going to see later down the road. But you got several different things in your good graces so far. You got a decent schedule. You got a late bye, which I always love schedules like that because the later in the year you can get a bye helps you out because you got teams that got players that are banged up at that point, and it's going to work out really well for them. I have a feeling. Not going to say NFC East champions, But I feel like if they stay on this road right here, they can be one of the 3 wild card teams we see, and that would be dangerous to anybody if a team's playing like this by the time they get to that point.
Look, if they play games like this against they play games like this in the other 5 division games they got, you might as well crown them NFC East champs. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying if they do. But I totally understand how you feel. I am a huge Jaden Daniels fan, simply because I'm witnessing a lot of the similar traits and characteristics in him, like you mentioned, like I saw in CDHR last year, where it's like, man, this guy is just so poised with knowing the NFL so little. I'm like, man, it's just amazing. It's amazing to watch. It's amazing to watch his maturation process. And he is the first to say, nah, I got to get better. I got to get better. I got to do better. I got to be better. I'm loving that he feels as though he's just scratching the surface, because he is.
I mean, look at what being a 5th-year senior did for him. You know, instead of taking the money, which now with college you get NIL deals, so you're still getting paid, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, there are players that are getting paid that aren't even going to go to the NFL at some point, but they're still making money. He knew that you're still getting paid. You still have an extra year to develop yourself. And these little things that he worked on then for that 5th year are paying off right now with his dedication to improving himself, being a leader on the team. And he says the right things in the interviews too. I mean, it's a breath of fresh air is what he's been between that and the coaching and the front office and the culture that they've built over there. It's all like he was the perfect guy, all stars aligned for this rebuild that is still going to take a couple of years. Yeah. But I told people this offseason, I said in 5 years, it might be till 2029. But you're going to see the Commanders in the Super Bowl. Will they win? I don't know. But in 5 years, I like the direction they're in. Dan Quinn did the same thing with Atlanta. Yeah, it's just going to be see if it's cool if he learned from that moment, because I don't want to see a moment like that happen with the Commanders. If you're going to go, at least be competitive, and if you're going to lose, don't lose that way. All right, you know. But other than that, it's going to be you're going to see in the next 5 years. I just think it would be funny if we see the Commanders in the Super Bowl before we see the Cowboys again, because I'm going to have so much to say if that happens, because it's looking like that could potentially happen.
Well, I mean, the way the teams are being built, I would say, you might. I think it is more plausible to see the Commanders go back to the Super Bowl and the Cowboys not even make its way to an NFC Championship game before the Commanders do make it back to the Super Bowl. But shout out to you guys. And yeah, I agree with you. I think where they're going to make their hay this year is defensively. I really do agree with you there. And to me, how potent their defense is going to be, it's going to matter how far this team will go. And I'm saying that even with the fact that you got a rookie quarterback that is mature beyond his years, who has taken the leadership mantle respectfully, and everybody seems to be on board with this guy leading the way for them Commanders. Yeah, your bread is butter with the defense. I agree with you. But they're 4-1 right now. I'd be celebrating. I'm celebrating for you, and I'm not a Commanders fan. And you got a chance to witness how it could have looked on the other end with Deshaun Watson. They're 1-4, and all the platitudes we had mentioned about Jaden Daniels, you can say the exact opposite with how the Browns have been with and including Deshaun Watson.
I'm going to truly celebrate week 8. Like, week 8 is when I'm truly going to celebrate. I sent you a picture of where I'm sitting that day, right?
I think you did. You did.
Yeah, that's when I'm going to celebrate. That's when I'm going to truly celebrate. But right now, I just don't want to drink the Kool-Aid too soon, because I've seen other people do that for the other fans of other teams. I'm also just not used to feeling like this at the same time about this Washington team. So to prevent what happened last year from happening again, I'm doing the right thing by just taking it with a grain of salt and just enjoying it little by little, because especially after seeing what happened in 2012, it can all go like that. And I just don't want to have that feeling this soon after recovering from what my life has been like. So just we're going to take it one step at a time.
It's understandable. It's understandable. Well,
Football fans rehab.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we have a fellow Commanders fan here in James Jones. He says, look, Jaden Daniels, he's earned my respect. He said, look, we've been through Hades and back the last 20 plus years. Look, just keep winning and competing. We'll be fine.
Hey, shout out to James. James is a fairly new subscriber to
Good to see you, my brother.
Sartoba Media. He came in during my Commander show last week. So look forward to seeing you again. I don't know if it's going to be as late as Friday when you joined us last week, James. I've had a pretty rough schedule over the past month, and the show's normally on Tuesdays. Yeah, I'm going to see how tonight's work goes, but it's either going to be tomorrow, if by not Wednesday, and at the latest on Friday. I'm really trying to get that back on track. But thank you, brother, for being a new subscriber to Sartoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
It's great to see you here, James. And I'm glad to see your Commanders, both yours and Drew's team, go to 4-1 and look a whole lot better this year than they did last year. Ooh. Now to a potential game of the week, but it missed the mark just a tad. The Colts, they go to their house of horrors yet again. They face off against the Jaguars, and if I'm not mistaken, the Colts have not beaten the Jaguars in Jacksonville since 2014, and they still haven't beaten the Jaguars in Jacksonville since 2014. 37-34 is the final score. Trevor Lawrence, best game of the year he's had thus far. 28-34, 371 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick. He had 2 carries of 4 yards on the ground. Tank Bigsby, I think this might be the guy that they need to go on the ground for. He had a big run. I think it was 60 yards against the Texans last Sunday. Looked like he followed that performance. I think it was like 7 carries for 90 yards in that one. 13 carries, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game. He did have a reception of 28 yards as well. So, yeah, I think you all might have found your running back of the future. Brian Thomas Jr., who might be the wide receiver of the future for that team. 5 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown. Christian Kirk, he had 4 receptions for 88 yards. And on defense, Trayvon Walker, one of the best players in the NFL. 4 solo tackles, 3 tackles for losses, 1 pass defense, 3 quarterback hits, and 3 sacks. He had 3 of the Jaguars' 4. And not to be outdone, Cam Little, he gave you 3 of 3 field goals, and that includes the game winner. Now, on the other side, we did not see Anthony Richardson. He had to go out of the game last week, and he's out. He was out of this game yesterday. Joe Flacco is making this offense look better, which is scary, I think, for him. 33 of 44, 359 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 3 carries for 22 yards. He did have a lost fumble. Probably the only mistake he made in that game. Alec Pierce, 3 receptions for 134 yards and a touchdown. And on defense, Nick Cross gave them a pick. Your thoughts on what seemed to be a slightly chaotic, but surprisingly competitive game between the Jaguars and the Colts in Duval?
The Colts were looking like a really, really good team throughout the first half of this game. Well, the first 3 quarters of the game with Joe Flacco, but the Jaguars were able to pull it off there at the end.
Right.
They really needed this win. I'm not going to say in the words of being competitive for the playoffs because that's a little bit out of the question at this point. I don't want to put that kind of pressure on them. But it was good for the future of Trevor Lawrence because had you lost this game, especially to a team that has got questions surrounding them with Anthony Richardson not even being there, regardless of Joe Flacco doing what he's been doing, Trevor Lawrence has been arguably one of the top 5 worst quarterbacks in the league this year. And he needed this for his confidence and for the team's confidence in him going forward to get this kind of a win. Because the Colts aren't terrible, but Anthony Richardson's still learning. He's a young quarterback, and the Colts have made a great insurance move with bringing in Joe Flacco during this past offseason, what they did in Cleveland last year, because had they not done that, the Browns would not have gone as far as they did last year, and they're showing that they should have brought Flacco back this year because they're really close. into having to bench Deshaun Watson, looking at the production and the moves that they pulled yesterday, which was next to none against a really good Commanders team, because we were used to teams beating up on the Commanders to the point that they did to the Browns yesterday. And you look and you see the Colts bring in Joe Flacco. Had you had a backup that wasn't to his caliber, you would have got beat like that by the Jaguars yesterday. So it was good enough competition to bring out the best in the Jags. But at the same time, they got a lot to work on as well, because they still didn't look next to anywhere close to what they were 2 years ago when they were one of the best teams in the league that we were talking about at that point. Like you said, Tank Bigsby, huge contributions, 101 yards in a game with 2 touchdowns. It's no slouch right there. He was definitely a big part of the weight that was pulled in this game. Like you said as well, Brian Thomas Jr. looks like he is the the wide receiver one of the future. And Christian Kirk also was a good complimentary piece as well. The defense having 4 sacks in the day, you can't take that lightly. And the field goal kicker and Cam Little, in getting the game-winning field goal and the team setting him up to get 3 of 3 on the day was absolutely huge. But I don't think that the Colts would have been this close in the game had Anthony Richardson would have been playing. And that's not a knock on him. He's still a young quarterback that reminds me of kind of like Caleb Williams. He needs a little bit more time to develop, but he also – and you can't even say that he needs more pieces around him, because look at what Joe Flacco is doing and getting the best out of them there. He needs to continue to develop himself. He needs to be fully healthy as well, because in these past 2 seasons, he's gotten banged up and, in my opinion, been thrusted out there a little bit quicker than he should have. With this having Joe Flacco there, you can take your time getting back, in a similar comparison to a college situation like Quinn Ewers in Texas, because they got a decent backup right now with Arch Manning. So right here and now, that's what they need to do with this Colts team, because they got a better backup with Joe Flacco than they did with Uncle Rico last year. And even though Uncle Rico's had his flashes, and I had my fun a few weeks ago when we made that short out of it, like, I'm just being real in the sense that you got a really good insurance policy with somebody who's proven, even though he played on a team with really great talent, he is a Super Bowl MVP at one point. Even though he's several years removed from it, he's still showing that he was a Super Bowl MVP for a reason. He's still got a little something left in the tank, and he helped bring out the best in competition for the Jags. And this could be the spark they need to turn their season around. They could have just had a slow start to the year like the Bengals, but I don't think that the Bengals are going to be as successful as the Jags can be with the turnaround this year.
No, I don't think they are. I agree with you. I think Richardson, I think he has been thrusted out both years, both his rookie year and his second year. I think that he was thrusted out to be the starter a little bit too soon, and the offensive guru / head coach of the team, Shane Steichen, I don't think he prepared Richardson both years well enough to actually steer the team the way that he needs to have his quarterback steer the team, because we have seen in, like you said, Minshew last year and now Flacco this year, how that offense seems to operate with a quarterback that has a little more experience under center. But he'll live and he'll learn. The Colts, they dropped a big one. They now are 2-3. The Jaguars, they get off the schneid, as Chris Berman used to say. They won their first game of the year. They are now 1-4. And as a Texans fan, I thank you, Jaguars, because I'm glad you put an L onto the Colts, a division L at that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Colts now are 0-2 in the division. Whew, that's not good. Jaguars are 1-1, but yeah, that's not good for the Colts. But good game though. Good game from both. Oh man. Six says, yeah, the Jags defense came up big. He also said that the Colts brought the fire to the Jags, but the latter had more in the tank in the end, which is true. James, he says, look, that's what I don't get with the Browns. We were winning with 5 different QBs, and they stayed with Watson.
Captain Rubdown.
Yes. Captain Rubdown. Oh, gosh, that's a good one.
Because he is a captain. That's why I was like, Captain Rubdown. He fits so well. I wonder, you know what would be funny? Is they got so many more people that are going to be labeled in this Diddy case. If he was part
Oh
of
Lord.
it. The Diddler 2.0.
Oh gosh. I would Yeah, you if you want to rail this show, talk about him because I'll talk 2 hours and have fun doing it.
I've seen you do it on Mentality. I'm ready for some zingers, but we gotta talk.
I know. Oh, good Lord. And yes, this is a no Diddy zone. So another game of the week contender, but they missed the mark. The Texans, they hosted the Bills. The Texans had a 20-3 lead. Let me put that correctly. Had a 20-3 lead early in the third quarter. The Bills fought their way back, tied it up at 20. And then a gaffe of errors, both directions, made the final score 23-20 in favor of the Texans. CJ Stroud, I would have to say that this was probably the fourth quarter, was probably the worst I have seen him look. Maybe, and I'll even say he looked better in the loss in the divisional round. I'd probably say this is the worst he's looked since he matched up against the Ravens, the regular season game last year. 28-38, 331 yards, a touchdown, a pick, a lost fumble. Oh, and the pick and the lost fumble were both in the fourth quarter. 3 carries for 27 yards. Stephon Diggs, who, whether he said it or not, this was a revenge game. He had a decent outing. 6 receptions for 82 yards. Josh Allen Nico Collins, he had 2 receptions, 77 yards, including a 67-yard touchdown pass. Unfortunately, after that, he pulled his hamstring and did not return the rest of the game, and that pass was early in the second quarter. On the other end, James Cook, to me, the MVP of the game. 20 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown, 2 carries to 17 yards in the air. The Bills offense, they got 150 yards on the ground. Terrell Bernard, that fourth quarter interception I talked to you about, beautiful. And I'll give you props, sir. Beautiful play. Actually was on the tight end, read the play, and bounced back because this was going to, if I'm mistaken, Diggs. Bounced back and cut the route in front and caught a wonderful interception. That was a great play by Bernard. I guess you say the hero of the game for at least the Texans would be Kaimi Fairbairn, 3 of 3 field goals. The long was the game winner from 59 yards. Here is where I circle where the game was won and lost. Josh Allen, 4 carries for 54 yards, 9 of 30, 131 yards, and a touchdown. I'll say it again. Josh Allen, who has been an MVP candidate thus far this year and has been an MVP candidate years prior. 9 completions of 30 attempts for 131 yards, a touchdown. I said this is the green room. That's the stat I circle, and I'll even circle James Cook's on the ground, because to me, the Bills should have won this game with Cook having more than 20 carries. And yes, this is a Texans fan saying this. The Bills gave the Texans the game just simply wanting Josh Allen to be Superman. And thank you. Thank you, Sean McDermott, for wanting Josh Allen to be Superman and not have James Cook have the ball 30 carries, because I think if he had 30 carries, he would have won the game. You would have won the game for the Bills. Your thoughts on the Texans and Bills, sir?
I share the same sentiments with the fact that had they ran the ball towards the end of the regulation, it would have ran enough time off the clock to where either the Texans would have had no shot at doing what they did with kicking the field goal and, in winning the game. Like had they done that, yeah, you might have potentially gone to overtime and you could have potentially lost it that way. But at the same time, had Josh Allen been 9 of 20, there were 10 less passes, and you ran the ball enough throughout the third and fourth quarter, you still probably would have been able to win, 20-17, at that point, the way the flow
Probably.
of the game was going. So
Probably.
it wouldn't have really made that much of a difference as far as the score, but it would have made a much difference as far as the game went at the same time.
Mhm.
So I like you and I were talking about this. We had Cole and I had a good breakfast together, pretty much through in our stream, and we were talking about certain games, certain points throughout the slate. And the one thing that I threw it out to him, which before he could even get it out, because he was thinking about it, was the fact that had they just ran the ball at the end, and just like he expressed, I mean, this is his own team. I would have said the same thing if they were playing the Commanders, and the Commanders snuck out with the dub with that.
Yeah.
Had the other team just ran the ball because they had the run established enough. Look at the fact that James Cook had, he had 20 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown. He had 20 carries. That's established the run well enough, because we were talking earlier about a team that had a running back that had 10 carries and 42 yards. And that to me still establishes the run enough. Oh, no, he had 12 carries. So that's not where I was saying earlier. If you can establish 10 to 12 carries in a game and you get somewhere close to 50 yards or north of it, you've established the run well enough to where you can do play actions and RPOs and then typical passing plays, because that just is a better flow of the offense. And the Bills had that to the point to where they could take the ball out of Josh's hands enough. If you haven't even completed enough passes to get yourself into double-digit completions for the game, why on the expletive are you continuing to throw the ball? Like, that to me makes absolutely no sense when you look at that. Yes, we know Josh Allen is very talented. He can also run the ball too. He is a very, very, very big quarterback, okay, overall. And, he also was big in the fact that he had a lot of incompletions yesterday. And I have to think about that when you're playing against a team with the Texans that have a pretty solid defense and a pretty solid offense as well. You can't be passing the ball like that, man, especially when you've got the amount of rushing yards that you did from your leading running back. I mean, going into halftime, the Texans were up 17-3. Okay, so they were playing from behind. Okay, and usually when you're playing from behind, you do need to throw the ball a little bit more. And you can't run the ball but so much, because you're going to run too much time off the clock in a lot of areas. But when you look at the fact that you had scored 14 points in the third quarter and you were only down 20-17 at that point, it was the fourth quarter, where had you ran the ball enough, you wouldn't have put yourself in that situation, especially when your quarterback has 4 carries for 54 yards on the day. It's even more rushing that's been established in that day. Ty Johnson added a little bit more on the ground as well. When you look at your receivers having lackluster production with their receiving, on top of the fact that Josh Allen's only completed 9 of 30 passes, I still don't know why you're putting the ball in his hands that much. It made absolutely no sense to me, because the Texans definitely made you pay for it on a day where C.J. Stroud was not 100% at his best, because he did turn the ball over. Okay, we have to acknowledge that and give credit where it's due there. But at the same time, he did better than Josh Allen when it comes to the production. Even though Josh Allen didn't turn the ball over, he got the best out of his offense overall, and you have to give your props where it's due. Even though we're throwing shade on Josh Allen, we have to throw praise in the moments where they're granted, and I have to give my praise to C.J. Stroud in this, because he's still only a second-year quarterback, and he's on a team that's 4-1 right now. So kudos to them. They don't always have to be pretty, but they just have to happen. And you look at what's happened with the Chiefs, and we'll get into that preview a little bit more here for tonight here in a little bit. But right here and right now, you got to be happy if you're a Texans fan, just like you would if you're a Commanders fan or a Vikings fan right now, because in the past few years, you've seen one of the worst, and now you're starting to see potentially the road to the best. And it's very good to see, and it's very exciting to watch.
This is my hope for you. Oh, no, before I even say this, thank you. I could not have said any of that any better, because you basically vocalized exactly what I was thinking the moment the game was over. Because I was like, if the Bills actually decided to commit to the run in the fourth quarter, this game was theirs.
Because both teams
That
don't
was
give up field goals.
yeah, yeah. This game was theirs. They committed to the run. That game was theirs. That was the first thought I had. I didn't even say, "Oh, right, Fairbairn, 59 yards." That's what I'm talking about. That was the first thought I had. I was like, "Man, Bills, you gave their game away from not running the ball in the fourth quarter." I that was the first thought I had. So you could not have vocalized exactly what I feel. And yeah, I'm happy that the Texans are 4-1, but being the being being sort of the glass half empty at times as I can be. 23-20 yesterday, 24-20 against the Jaguars last Sunday. Yes, both were W's, and yes, when we get to January, those are basically 2 wins. They doesn't matter how much, doesn't matter how pretty it looked. Oh, and both second halves, they only managed 2 field goals yesterday and only managed 1 field goal in the game. No, sorry, a field goal and a touchdown in the game. No, a touchdown, I'm sorry, in the game against the Jaguars. So 7 points in the second half last Sunday, 6 points in the second half yesterday. Now, I'm not happy about that, but I'm happy that they got the W. Now, what I want to see from this team is I want to see more discipline out of them because they seem to play undisciplined. It's been penalties to me. And yesterday, they sort of cleaned it up. In the first half, they actually didn't commit a penalty at all. And then they sort of slid back into penalty land, penaltyville. But to me, it was more reflective with how CJ Stroud was not taking care of the ball, which was and is uncharacteristic of him. I mean, the dude's only played. Well, let me see. Well, this was his 22nd NFL start. No, sorry, 20th NFL start. I forgot he didn't start 2 games last year. This is only his 20th NFL start we're talking about here. And if I'm saying that he's actually being careless, that is rare. And I'm thankful that the turnover and I'm thankful that the pick and the fumble did not come back to bite the Texans in the butt because it would have otherwise. But yes, I'm happy. The Texans, they're 4-1. The Bills, they dropped 3-2, and now they have the tiebreaker against the Bills. Should they tie at the end of the season, and it means that if they were to win the division and they tied in the season, this game will be taking place in Houston in January. So I'm happy about that. I'm a little bit alarmed about, of course, Nico Collins' hamstring. I am buoyed by that defensive front from the Texans, especially Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. Oh my gosh, those two. Woo. This isn't a Texan show, so I'm not going to go into it. But I'm buoyed by the performance of the defense. I'm not liking what I'm seeing with the offense, and I'm not liking seeing overall with the discipline of the team. But 4-1 is 4-1. And hopefully they will not have the mentality of rolling their helmets on the field. And we'll talk about their game later on too. But yes, 4-1 is the Texans, 3-2 is the Bills. After a spectacular 47-10 game against the Jaguars, they have really taken it on the chin. 2 straight road games. Hopefully they can bounce back. But I'm glad they didn't bounce back enough against my squad. So thank you, Sean, for what you did at the end of the game. It topped what we gave you as gifts at the end of it as well. Whew, man. More Sunday games on tap. We're doing the afternoon affairs, as this would have somewhat counted as an upset of the week, but there's another one that I think is a little bit better. The Broncos, they mollywopped the Raiders 34-18. Bo Nix, who had a nice little talk with Sean Payton on the sideline, 19-27, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 8 carries for 9 yards. The rest of the offense really didn't do much of anything. On defense, basically, that is where the hay was made. Riley Marcy had a pick and 2 passes defended. I'll skip the main person in the game to me. On the other side of things, Gardner Minshew, 12 of 17, 137 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, 2 carries, 22 yards, and a pull. Aiden O'Connell received some action, and he did not fare much better. Wow. Brock Bowers, 8 receptions, 97 yards and a touchdown. Max Crosby on defense, 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, and 1 wasted performance of a stud. Oh, and the other quarterback that replaced Uncle Rico, Aiden O'Connell, 10 of 20, 94 yards and a pick. But the person that really deserves the attention, Pat Surtain II, 2 passes defended, 2 picks. One of them was a 100-yard pick 6. Your thoughts on the Broncos beating the Raiders up in Mile High?
This game was ugly. It's a divisional matchup. This game was absolutely ugly. Very similar to the Jets, where Aaron Rodgers threw 3 interceptions, even though it was between 2 quarterbacks. Still had 2 quarterbacks combined throwing for 3 interceptions, which doesn't help your cause at all. You look at what Bo Nix did. He didn't do spectacular things, but he did enough and managed the game very well as having a little bit of help from his defense on, between Moss and Surtain. Without them, they wouldn't have been able to get this done. So good on them. 34 points is definitely a healthy recipe towards a victory, and that's what happened in this game.
Agreed. This was not pretty. This is basically for a football fan for enjoyment. This is basically for a football fan, a Broncos fan to enjoy. If you're a casual fan or a Raiders fan, you'd want to simply skip this game because it was horrible. And I'm sure Devontae Adams is smiling because he's like, "Oh yes, my totally healed, my totally messed up hamstring is glad that I'm not playing because you all are absolutely horrible." The Raiders, they dropped to 2-3. The Broncos, who they started off the season 0-2, now they are 3-2. But yes, I agree. Horrible game. Now we're getting to the no, but it could have counted as one, as the Cardinals went to Santa Clara. They played the 49ers, and a certain 49ers fan that we both know took it a little on the chin. The 49ers had a 23-10 lead going into the fourth quarter, and they final score 24-23 Cardinals. Kyler Murray, efficient, 19 of 30, 195 yards a touchdown. He did throw a pick. He also gained 83 yards on the ground. He had a rushing touchdown as well on 7 carries. James Conner, he helped establish the run along with Murray, 19 carries, 86 yards. He had 2 receptions for 14 yards. On defense, Kaiser White, he had a pick, and I think Mac Wilson Sr. had a beautiful dive for the pick to seal things for the Cardinals. Chad Ryland, he had 3 or 4 from the field goal range. Of course, the game winner to boot. Brock Purdy on the other side of things, 19 of 35, 244 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. 4 carries for 33 yards. Uncharacteristic stat line for one Mr. Purdy. Jordan Mason, another uncharacteristic stat line, 14 carries. That part. Not necessarily what he performed. He only got 14 carries. 89 yards on a lost fumble. And that lost fumble was huge because that one led to the game-winning drive for the Cardinals. He also had a reception for 9 yards. We actually had a Brandon Ayuk sighting After signing that contract extension, we thought, well, he must have receded into shadows. 8 receptions, 147 yards, and 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 on defense, again from the wasted effort department, Nick Bosa, 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 1 pass defense, and a 30-yard return for an interception. Your thoughts on this NFC West tilt?
It's another game that was impacted highly by turnovers. You look at Jordan Mason with the fumble. You look at Brock Purdy with the 2 interceptions. Even though Kyler Murray only threw 1 interception, it's still a combination of 3 turnovers to 1. And that's a difference of what came down to. I mean, yes, it's a 1-point game, but had 1 less turnover happen, they could have had a field goal and won by 2 points. I mean, that's just it's just as simple as that. Brock Purdy's still a very young quarterback, but at least we're seeing points to where he is human. Over the past few seasons of him playing, we've seen the highs and the lows with him, and we've seen, with his injury in the playoffs, that was the lowest of points, and he's bounced back, and he's still proven that he's, in the top of the league of quarterbacks. But at the same time, there's still some growth there. You're without CMC, who is going to be November until he comes back because of the tendonitis in his legs, which was a very big blow because it's another option that they had to establish the run and also play actions. And he is a receiving back as well. So you add all that in there, that's a big piece they're losing. Plus, Brandon Ayuk, with all the drama that was going on during the offseason, didn't get any reps during that time because he was trying to get paid. Finally gets paid, comes back, and it took till the 5th week of the year for us to really see him again. It took over a month for him to really get production, and it happened, but it happened a little too late and against a team that was trying to bounce back after getting smacked around the previous week by a really good Commanders team at this point. So, and they did. So, good on the Cardinals to show that they did learn from things that happened to them last year when they were getting smacked around before Kyler Murray came back from injury. Good on the Cardinals from learning from the losses that they've already accrued in this year to play a really good San Francisco 49ers team that is banged up a little bit early on in the year, that might not be the same 49ers team that we're accustomed to seeing over the past few seasons. So, super fan. He actually called me last Thursday. I owe him a call back because he called me while he was at work. I did tell him to call me back the next day that I was off, which was literally the next day, but I didn't hear from him. So I'll probably extend myself out to him maybe today on the way to work to see how he's feeling after a game like this. But yes, the interceptions, the fumble by Mason. Mason has definitely been holding his own over these 5 weeks without CMC.
Yes.
He's been doing a great job in contributions toward the run game, but he can't do it all on his own. And the best of teams have a really good running back, but also a complementary piece. He's there to be the complementary piece, and he's doing it without his number 1 piece, that being CMC. So it's kind of bad because Nick Bosa put on a really good show for the defense again. He continues to do that and be the top dog for the defense. It's just sad to see them waste that kind of effort. George Kittle, with what he's already done this year, he was quiet in this game in comparison to what he did the previous week. But at the same time, these are the type of players I want to see win games because they deserve it. Even though we have our friend, the super fan, who does get a little bit too much out there with his takes on said team, I don't despise the 49ers like I do the Cowboys or like you do the Titans.
Right.
So it's sad to see you got this type of talent on the team and they're losing heartbreakers like this. And it's only because of the miscues in the turnover game. So hopefully they can get back on track before it's too late, but there's still a lot of season left. I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid as far as them losing and being losers for the remainder of the season. But what I will say is these little miscues of the fumbles and the interceptions, they do need to tighten up soon before it's too late. And they see themselves in a hole like the Jaguars are now trying to build themselves out of, and the Bengals as well.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to say that, oh, wow, the 49ers, they're out of the playoff run. No. I mean, heck, they're in the thick of things in the NFC West. So Even though they're 2-3, the same with the Cardinals. They're still in it, although this is the second division loss for the 49ers this year. Uh, both teams are 2-3. Of course, we'll see them match up again in the desert later in the year. Yeah. And then you have the other NFC West team, the Los Angeles Rams. They were hoping to get to 2-3. They didn't. They fell to the Packers 24-19. Jordan Love, 15-26, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw a pick six, but after that, I give him the credit for this. After the pick six, he picked up his play and actually was better. He actually had 3 carries for 10 yards also on the ground. Josh Jacobs, 19 carries, 73 yards to the touchdown. He also had a reception for 21 yards. Tucker Kraft, the tight end, gave you 4 receptions, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns was a 65-yarder. Pretty play, too. A nice stiff arm. And he actually showed some getaway speed. Jayden Reed, who is looking like he's becoming the number 1 wide receiver for the Packers, 4 receptions at 78 yards. He also had 2 carries for 19 yards on the ground. On defense, Carl Brooks, 3 quarterback hits and a sack and a half. Xavier McKinney, it's like I see his name every single game the Packers play. He ended up with another interception. On the Rams side of things, Matthew Stafford, 29-45, 260 yards, a touchdown, and that Xavier McKinney pick. Kieran Williams, and I hate seeing this because it was a wasted performance, 22 carries, 102 yards on the ground with a touchdown. He did have a lost fumble. He had a reception for 3 yards, but they established a run with them, and they still couldn't get over the hump. Jordan Whittington, 7 receptions, 89 yards. It just goes to show how thin they are at wide receiver with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp out. It looks like the Stafford is relying on tight ends, which is fine, but can't rely on them all the time. On defensive end, Kobe Turner, the guy who was supposed to be the heir apparent to Aaron Donald, 5 solo tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 1 pass defense, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. He was a stud in this game. Unfortunately, it all went for naught, along with Jalen McCullough's interception as well. Your thoughts on the Packers improving to 3-2 with the 24-19 victory over the Rams?
I tell you what, man, Xavier McKinney is definitely proved that he has definitely been elevating himself since coming over to the Packers. I mean, he was with the Giants for his first 4 seasons, and they weren't getting this type of production out of him. So between Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney in this past offseason, probably the 2 biggest pieces that the Packers made during the offseason because of the production that they're getting out of McKinney on the defensive side, which they couldn't develop him like that for the Giants. He wasn't making that type of a splash on the defensive side. And Josh Jacobs is a good substitution for Aaron Jones departing for the Vikings. Okay, so it's keeping the Packers relevant within that division that the Vikings are at the top of, since Aaron Jones is now there establishing the run and doing the great things over there for the Vikings now. So looking at that, the Packers are still relevant in that base. But I will say this: the Rams did not quit. They continue to fight throughout this game. But it's another game, and we've had several that we've already discussed so far in this program, that the amount of turnovers came back to bite you by the end of the game, because the Rams had 1 more turnover than the Packers, and they lost by 1 possession. So thinking about all of that, I have to put that in the perspective of turnovers kill you, and that's what happened here. Jordan Love didn't have stellar numbers, but he did enough, and he was consistent enough to keep them in the positives, and he didn't have too many turnovers that hurt them like the Rams did. And the Rams are beat up right now. They've got Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp out. Imagine how this game would have been had the 2 of them been active in the lineup and Matthew Stafford had more options, because at times he was doing a lot with very little. It was just the turnovers that killed them in the end.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because I think the Rams could have a say in the NFC West, but unfortunately, with what you just said, not taking care of the ball could really hurt them, and it did in this game. They fall to 1-4. The Packers, they improved to 3-2, and hopefully for both teams, they will be competitive toward the end. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they said this was the 100th meeting between the Packers and the Rams. So wow, non-divisional rivals, but they have met that many times. That's impressive. All right, to the Sunday night game, the Cowboys and the Steelers. It was a 90-minute, not rain, lightning delay. So kickoff was at 9:45 local time or Eastern time. So yes, the game finished about 1 a.m. It was a how can I put this? It was I think it was this. For 3 quarters. It was a bull and shoe ugly game for 3 quarters, and I did not put it for on the weather. I put on the two teams actually offensively could not get it together and have their moments, but they would just throw picks or basically stall in before they get the field goal range and punt. But the fourth quarter, it got exciting, and the Cowboys, with 20 seconds left, pull out a 20-17 victory over the Steelers in Western Pennsylvania. Dak Prescott, 29-42, the $60 million man, 352 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a lost fumble. He also had a carry for 3 yards. He also had an important fumble recovery that led to the game-winning touchdown pass. Rico Dowdle. I had to actually do a double take. A Cowboys running back having 20 carries on the ground. I'm impressed. 20 carries, 87 yards against the Steelers, no less. 2 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown over in the air. Jalen Tolbert, 7 receptions, 87 yards, including the game-winning touchdown reception. The Cowboys offense, I'll give it to Dak. He spread it out evenly. 10 different receivers had a reception. And Brandon Aubrey, he was 2 of 3 from field goal range. The long he had was 55 yards. You had TJ Watt, who another wonderful stud performance from a difference maker on defense. And it went for naught. 7 solo tackles, a tackle for loss, 3 quarterback hits, and a sack and a half. And probably came this close to a fumble recovery, too. This dude, the only thing he'd do was sell popcorn and hot dogs and beer. And then you have Justin Fields, who had a putrid performance, really. He didn't turn the ball over, but you can have bad performances, not turn the ball over. 15-27, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 carries for 27 yards. Your thoughts on the Cowboys' 2017 victory over the Steelers?
Multiple things that affected this game and to why it ended the way that it did. First of all, the Cowboys got lucky that they didn't lose this game because the amount of turnovers they had. Dak throwing 2 interceptions and also losing a fumble. Just himself is good. For as good as he did just as much bad in this game because they got lucky with the fact that they had Dowdle do what he did and having 20 carries for 87 yards when we've been talking about it all season long through the first 4 games that they had not been establishing the run. When they haven't been establishing the run really in the past couple of years, which is why Tony Pollard walked out and went to another team. And you see what he's doing and being the only spark really for the team that he's on right now. But I digress. Here and now, they did what they did. They did the things they needed to do to get the win.
Right.
But the Steelers were still not horrible on defense. I'll get to that in a second. They need to do a better job of maximizing the production out of Justin Fields because look at what he put up in this game. I mean, and it's on his shoulders as well because he had 11 incompletions and he only put up 131 passing yards. He did have 2 touchdowns, and he is doing a better job as far as He's not throwing a lot of interceptions. He's not having a lot of turnovers. There were a couple plays where we could have a different conversation about that. And the reason why they weren't able to catch it is because, I mean, look at what the weather was doing for an hour and a half when they were on delay. It was raining, it was lightning, you know, the field conditions weren't the greatest, and it contributed for the Cowboys because of where they were playing. They weren't playing at home, and the conditions, there were some drop passes that should have been interceptions by the defense. But here and now we can at least say that there was positive production from the Steelers in that aspect on offense. Even though they were a little slow in some parts, at least there they got lucky. Their offense, as far as their run game, needs to get well more established. But their defense was not horrible because, like you said, with T.J. Watt was 7 total tackles, 7 solo tackles, tackle for a loss, 3 quarterback hits, and 1.5 sacks was the spark to this defense. But you want to know what a real spark really was, and it was on the goal line. The play before the Cowboys scored.
Oh, that was a beautiful play.
Landon Roberts.
Oh, my gosh.
Getting through the A-gap and soaring through the air to make that stop for one. The Cowboys got this close to the game being decided by that play, because had Dak not fallen on that ball right there, that would have been the 4th turnover by the Cowboys, and that would have been it. And it wouldn't have been a turnover by him because he wasn't the one that got waxed. Right. But that was one of the best plays I've seen this season. It was in that play I wanted to see the Steelers win because had they stopped him on the next play, if Tolbert got banged up on that play, that they had to take a timeout to the point where he had to recover in order for them to get the play that they did with the passing touchdown to Tolbert, which was ironic enough because he did not look good when he was like on the side breathing for a second. The Cowboys had to take timeout. Then the Steelers took another timeout because they saw the play that the Cowboys were picking. So it was a battle of timeouts right there at the end. But you called it right on the head. This game was absolutely dumpster pelican worthy for the first 3 quarters. Yeah, weather and the turnovers and the play decisions and just the way the flow of the game was going. Absolutely, it was not fun to watch. No, 4th quarter, it was fun, but most of us were half asleep by that point. And watching that 4th quarter, it woke me up enough to where I could make the promo for this show today, and then I went to bed because I was just exhausted after taking a nap yesterday after the Commanders game, and then I slept through a good portion of the 4 o'clock games. But at least I was up by the end of this one to watch the entire 4th quarter. I slept in the first three quarters, which was great because I didn't miss much. But I got up towards the end of the 3rd quarter, and it was perfect timing because I got to see the best of the game then, and that's why I can give you this take on it. Had the Steelers won the game, even though you want to give it to T.J. Watt for the production, we would have given it to Landon Roberts for that play on the goal line because that was absolutely beautiful. And, this type of win right here, though, I will say this type of win for the Cowboys can be the spark to get them to start winning games this year, to where we start seeing Tim and the Cowboys fans be out in bunches talking about the Super Bowl again. But if it means good competition for the Eagles and the Commies, to where we can see the best within the NFC East and the best person win or the best team win, I'm all for it. But I just hope the Cowboys fans, I just hope their egos don't get too big after this. The few ones that are the friends of mine who are Cowboys fans, the few of them in that category that actually are realistic, pretty much think this season is over. And I'm the one, as a Commies fan, talking to them saying, look, guys, for this type of win that you have here, this is the type of win that can re-spark your season to where you can at least make it as a wild card team. So, you don't have all the pieces you want. You're not playing as consistent as you want to play. But it's those type of wins right there against a really good team in the Steelers who have a really good defense that's carried them this far that can reignite your season. And I just want to say, don't be surprised if you see the Cowboys make it at least as a wild card. In the way this division is right now, they can still win it. So good for them to get this type of win, but they got to clean up those turnovers because that's going to cost you if you keep doing that.
Well, if it weren't for your commies actually doing as well as they would, the Cowboys actually would be leading the division. But as it stands, they're 3-2. They're 3-2. Both of you have a divisional win against the Giants in pocket. The Steelers, unfortunately, they fall to 3-2 after having a 3-0 start. Hopefully, this is not a portent of things to come for them. And now we get to the upset of the week. And it happened in Seattle. The building formerly known as CenturyLink Field had the Seahawks host the Giants. The Seahawks was lining up to kick a field goal to tie the game up at 23 when a block kick was the end result, returned for 6. The Giants ended up winning the game 29-20. I still, even after compiling all of these stats, I still have to make sure I'm seeing this correctly. Daniel Jones, 23 of 34, 194 yards. He did throw a pick. He also threw a touchdown pass. 11 carries for 38 yards. He actually had a decent game. Surprised. Tyrone Tracy. They actually decided to establish the run too. 18 carries, 129 yards, reception for a yard. And Tracy's 129 and Jones's 38 on the ground. They contributed a lot to the Giants' 175 yards on the ground against the Seahawks. And then there's Darius Slayton, the guy who I've even heard from one Wise El Jefe saying that he couldn't catch a cold. 8 receptions, 122 yards, and that touchdown. To me, the star of the game, Dexter Lawrence II, 2 tackles for losses, 4 quarterback hits, and not 1, not 2, but 3 sacks. DJ Davidson, not to be outdone, 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits. He had 2 sacks. The Giants defense, they had on the total on the day 7 sacks. Oh, not to be outdone, Greg Joseph, 3 of 3 for field goals. But yes, they sacked 7 times. One, Geno Smith, who was 28 of 40, 284 yards and a touchdown. He also had to carry the ball 4 times for 72 yards. And Jason Myers had 2 of 3 field goals. Your thoughts on the Seahawks underwhelmingly playing against a team they should have beaten, but they got clobbered?
Giants defense stepped up. They stepped up big. I mean, you look at the sacks, you look at the fact that they contained the Seahawks, who have been putting up a good amount of points this year, which is why they've been in the position that they're in. The defense stepped up really well. On top of that, you got to look at the fact they had nearly 200 yards of rushing on the offensive side, which helps you establish the flow of the game, but also helps you control the clock as well. And that's exactly what happened in this game. So between the defense, with the way that they were able to contain the Seahawks offense, and the Giants rushing attack, because their quarterback play has still been very subpar by Daniel Jones. Mm-hmm. You know, he's not completely doing what they want him to do, as far as the fact that he couldn't even put the ball in the end zone with the touchdown. Played absolutely terrible that way. And his incompletions in comparison to that are just as bad. If it wasn't for the defense, if it wasn't for their running game, the Giants would have lost yet another game. They'd be 1-4, just like some other teams out there that should be 3-2 or 4-1 right now. So for the Giants, it's good on them that they got their second win of the year. I will give them the credit where it's due. Darius Slayton as a receiver was definitely the actual spark to this team. But we have to look at this. Daniel Jones's stats with this, Cole, I don't know if you copied and pasted from last week, but those stats, I hate to call you out on it, are actually incorrect. You set me up for failure on that, because he was 23 of 34 for 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. He actually had no interceptions thrown. in
Thank you.
that game, because I something was just telling me I needed to fact check that real quick. I'm sorry, but I had to.
No,
With
that's fine.
that, it was that the rushing stats were right, but Daniel Jones, we're used to him sucking, so I'm not even mad at you for that.
Yeah.
You copy and paste because we're used to him putting up those kind of numbers. So I do have to retract how I started this out. But Darius Slayton's numbers of 8 of 122 and a touchdown were correct. The stat line by the defense is correct. Also, the fact of Greg Joseph being 3 for 3 on the day of field goals definitely helps you out because you won 29-20, and those 9 points pretty much came from your kicker at that point as well. It's still the heart of what I was saying, though, with your defense doing what they did to contain the Seahawks and the fact that you have your rushing attack doing what it did, and now adding the piece of your quarterback not turning the ball over, which is what we are used to seeing throughout the first 4 weeks. It was a recipe for a win. And if the Giants can continue to do that, this NFC East is going to be very interesting. It can revert back to something that we were used to seeing about a decade ago, where they were calling it the NFC Beast and not the NFC Least of what it was a few years ago. But before they used to call it the NFC Beast because there was competition throughout there. The Eagles look like they're regressing. The Giants, if they continue to play this way, are going to be on the come up. And I hope for the overall competition to bring out the best of everybody, this is the beginning of that being a thing. So we shall see how it goes throughout the rest of this season, but one step at a time. Don't get too far ahead of yourselves if you expect to do something special in the future.
My apologies for not copying Daniel Dimes. I'm sorry, Daniel Wooden Nickel. Yeah, she was throwing dimes in that game. Yes, I agree with you. My apologies. But yes, I do hope the NFC East gets to the point where you all are, I don't say beating up, but basically raising the level of play with all 4 teams in the division. And speaking of which, that makes the Giants now 2-3. Let me see. Yeah, 2-3. They still are bringing up the rear in the NFC East at the moment, but 2-3 would bring up the rear. Not too bad. The Seahawks, though, they lead the NFC West, but they drop to 3-2. And now we go to the game of the week, and that game was in Paycor Stadium between the Cincinnati Bengals and the visiting Baltimore Ravens. The Bengals controlled this game for much of it. Unfortunately, they did not control the part they needed the most. 41-38 was the final score. The Ravens beat the Bengals in overtime. Lamar Jackson, 26 of 42, 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, 12 carries, 55 yards. He did have a lost fumble in overtime. Derrick Henry, 15 carries, 92 yards, including a 51-yard scamper to the Bengals 5 to seal things in overtime. He had a touchdown in the first quarter. He had a reception for 4 yards. Zay Flowers, who looks like he's becoming the guy that Lamar Jackson's going to almost as religiously as Isaiah Likely, 7 receptions, 111 yards, 1 carry for 9 yards on the ground. On defense, Marlon Humphrey, he did get a pick. The only interception of one Joe Burrow, who otherwise was absolutely stellar. 30 of 39, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns, along with the Marlon Humphrey pick. He had 2 carries for a yard. And Jamar Chase, 10 receptions, 193 yards, and 2 of those 5 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 9 receptions, 83 yards. He had 2 more of those 5 touchdowns of Joe Burrow. Your thoughts on this game? Because you said you had many thoughts on this one.
This type of win for the Ravens makes me feel like they're going to be the team to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this year because of how resilient you can be. How often do we see a team with a quarterback that throws for 5 touchdowns and lose? It's not
Rarely,
that often.
if ever. Yeah.
Very, very rare. That's what I was thinking when watching this game yesterday. So looking at that, especially when you have your quarterback lose a fumble in the overtime, and you still find a way to win. That's remarkable in that extent because, I mean, both teams played very, very well, putting up a lot of numbers. Both of their defenses were not that great, which is the problem, which is why they gave up so many points. The Bengals now have their second shootout of the year that they've lost because they lost to the Commanders, which makes this upcoming weekend's game between the Commanders and Ravens even more interesting. But between those two teams, when it comes to the Ravens and the Bengals in this game, yes, the defense was not great, and you had a pure shootout by your offense based on numbers. If we were going to look at numbers alone, the Bengals should have won this game.
Right.
And for what they've endured this season, I wouldn't have been mad if they won the game. But because of where they were at, for one, with them playing this game in Cincinnati, it's another reason why I feel like they should have won this game, because they lost to the Commanders in a shootout at home as well. It's not looking good. They're going to have to make some changes, just like Joe Burrow said in his press conference yesterday. That could be defensive coordinator. That could be trying to reach out for somebody in a trade to impact the defense, because the offense isn't that bad. They've got really good talent. They've been scoring, but they've been scored on, and there's been a lot of miscues when in their secondary, the defensive backs, even in linebacking as well, in the middle of the field, that's contributed to them giving up first downs and setting up scores, whether it be by field goals or touchdowns. So they have to address this right now within the next week or two, because if not, the season's going to slip through their fingers even worse, because the Bengals are historically known, when they do have good years, to get off to slow starts. But regardless, if you're the Jags or you're the Bengals in this moment, good for the Jags to get their win yesterday. But both teams are in the same boat with a 1-4 record, and they need to snap out of it real fast. And the Bengals need to snap out of it real fathering quick, because this season is going to slip through their fingers, like I said, in the heat of a moment, if they do not make some changes soon, because they're not going to be able to study hard enough to turn things around this fast. You've already seen what you've got in your defense and your offense at this point. You realize your strong shoots right now are your offense. Special teams is suspect, but your defense is in the expletive right now, and that starts with an S and ends with an S. So take it for as you would in this moment, but you got to make those moves, and you got to make them fast, because if not, a lot of people are going to be gone by the end of this season with the potential that they've got overall.
Suds? Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Put hits and take an S and put in front of it.
I figured that's what you were meaning, but I have a Bengals friend who was in the moment. He was like, "Man, Joe Burrow's cooking," but y'all don't want to admit that. And I actually said to him, I said, "Look, your defense better be cooking along with him, because this wonderful stat line is all for naught." Which, unfortunately, that is what's happened. The Bengals, they dropped to 1-4. The Ravens, they improved to 3-2, and it looks like they now are knocking on the door to the AFC North lead, and quite possibly, I agree with you, they may challenge for the AFC crown if they could put together wins like this and be as resilient as you say they are, and they are. Yeah, that could be a problem for any team that battles them. Well, that concludes the game of the week, and it also concludes this week's opening drive. We'll be right back with our grand champ.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989 on 2. Ready?
We're just getting started. Total Football Talk will return right after this. Whether it's news, the largest egg producer finds bird flu in chickens at a Texas plant, weather, devastating tornadoes rip through the heart of the United States, inspiration, a breast cancer survivor completed the journey of chemotherapy, and now begins a future one of matrimony or sports. Michael Jordan is shown on a photo with Diddy. LeBron James has a video extolling the virtues of a Diddy party. This has been yet another beating a dead horse presentation. We got you covered. BS3 Network, in association with Comey Media Incorporated, proudly present The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. Live every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central. Hey, Eagles fan. Join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast. Every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast outlets.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. You kids from the block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason
Where are my dogs at? That's right. Welcome back to Total Football Talk, where now we're about to award our grand champs of this week. And Drew, you do the honors, sir.
I promise I was barking, but I had myself accidentally muted. My bad. But I was barking in the background. I got to go, even though he had 16 incompletions this week, I got to go with Kirk Cousins as my dog of the week. 509 passing yards.
That's crazy.
He did have an interception, but he had 4 touchdowns and was a big part of the spark that led to them winning in overtime and coming back in the fourth quarter. Even though this game was dumpster Pelican worthy, for them throughout the first half of this game, they still were competitive enough to stay within it to win the game in overtime. And because of that, I have to choose him. 500 passing yards is literally video game. And the fact that they won, when you got somebody else that we were just talking about having 5 touchdowns and losing, he had 4, but 500 yards. And with that being said, I got to go with Captain Kirk as my choice for the dog of the week.
That isn't a bad choice, my friend. That isn't a bad choice at all. See, for me, there's many people that I could choose, but I'm probably going to go with one that probably will surprise you. This just hit me when I actually saw it. Dexter Lawrence II. For those who don't know, defensive tackle for the Giants. Wise LFA and I have talked about my mentality, brother. He and I have talked about this. I said, man, if your team is going to go anywhere, that guy needs to be a difference maker. And yesterday he was. You want your defensive tackle to be a disruptor. And 4 quarterback hits, 2 tackles for losses, and 3 sacks. You can't disrupt more than that. And yeah, I could say, well, the blocked field goal is a contributing factor, and Danny Dimes dropping 2 dimes in the end zone, and Darius Slayton actually having a really good game. Yeah, all that is great. But those 3 sacks, he had 3 of the Giants' 7. And I have to give him the tip of the cap. So, Mr. Lawrence II, you are my dog this week. You are my grand champ this week, my friend.
I like it. That's a good
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, I like yours with Cousins as well because he did his thing. Ooh, man, he did his thing.
Total Football Talk.
My bad. In the chat, in the replay, tell us who is your grand champ of this week. We really do want to know. And now we are in the featured attractions portion of the program where we break down 3 of the biggest games of the upcoming week. One of them happens to be tonight, Monday Night Football style. The Chiefs, they are undefeated at 4-0. They're playing against a Saints team that is now struggling. They won their first 2. Now they have lost the last 2. All times are Eastern, that we say. 8:15 will be the kickoff on ESPN tonight. Now for the Saints. Now they scored 47 points against the Panthers and then 44 against the Cowboys. Then they struggled mightily against the Eagles, and they were turnover prone against the Falcons. Why had the Saints considerably cooled off after the first 2 weeks?
They've been exposed in certain ways. You got to look at the caliber of teams that they're playing, and I feel like that tonight potentially could be a repeat of that. You know, you're playing the Falcons. The Falcons was the bigger of the two. I think the Eagles got lucky with what they did, and the Eagles more so they have cooled off in their offensive production this year, but their defense is still pretty well overall. So that's why they won that. That was a defensive contest in that game that they lost. With the Falcons, that was more of an offensive shootout to that point, where the offense stepped up a little bit than they did the previous week, but regressed defensively, which is why you have, the Falcons and Captain Kirk winning that game. They're going to have to step it up defensively tonight, and they're going to have to try to cool the Chiefs off a little bit, even though the Chiefs haven't been as productive offensively this year. They've still been finding ways to win, and it's because of their defense. It's not looking good for the Saints playing up against that defense tonight, but I digress till our final take on this subject.
Well, and actually, that's a good take. I agree with you. I think the team as a whole has actually gotten out of sync, and I think that it's hurt. That's hurt them the last 2 weeks for sure. For the Chiefs, now they're undefeated, but they have done it through the skin of their teeth all 4 games. In fact, all four contests has been by 1 score, and with the Bengals, it literally was by 1 point. Now they have had these close games, but they've also had injuries too. Isaiah Pacheco is one. Rashee Rice, although he was going to be suspended, is another. When will the injuries in close games start to catch up to the Chiefs? And when will the mute button actually catch up to my button?
try to save those coughs from hitting the airwaves. I had to mute it, but my apologies. Hey, that's the first one, and it took 2 hours to get to that point. So good job from me. But because we've had some shows before where I've done like 5 or 6 of them in a show. So yes, I'm proud that I have improved over the weeks with that. But when it comes to the injuries for the Chiefs, tonight can be the time where they get exposed on it, because the Saints have proved within the first 2 weeks of the season, or within the first 2 weeks of the season, what type of team that they can be, because they played against some decent teams during those first two wins as well. So tonight can be a time that it happens, and I feel like the Chiefs win tonight is going to be more so on the shoulders of their defense. If they lose, it's going to be because of the offense and those injuries that you discussed. So here and now, before I give my take, I will at least acknowledge that part. But can the Saints overcome that right there with who they're playing on with the defensive side of the Chiefs in comparison to their offense? Oh, absolutely. They most certainly can. And we'll get to that part when I give my take here in a minute on who's going to win.
All right. And I do agree with you. I think this is something the Saints can, if they choose to, I think they can exploit, especially defensively. I think they can exploit that and put the pressure on Mahomes offensively to execute a little more than he would like, although he can. It's better that you force a quarterback to execute rather than have it be comfortable and execute. So who do you have winning this game?
Based on the way that they lost the past 2 weeks, I don't see the Saints losing 3 games in a row. And I also don't see the Chiefs going undefeated this year.
Oh.
Are they still Super Bowl contenders as of right now?
Mm.
Yes, because they are undefeated. They are the reigning back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Not going to take that away from them if they lose this game tonight. If they lose this game tonight, their season is still okay, and you can blame it on injuries or whatever, and there's still a very long season. However, if the Saints lose tonight, they are pretenders based on what they were doing the first 2 weeks with how high as everybody, even including ourselves, is what we got on them after those first 2 weeks, because we were both in that same category.
Mm-hmm.
And to save us from being in that category of being bandwagon analysts, I want to say that I just don't see them losing 3 games in a row. The fact that they lost by 3 points or less in the past 2 weeks, it speaks volumes in comparison to how the Chiefs have been winning games over the past month. It's time for them to lose. It's going to happen tonight. The Saints are not going to have 3 consecutive losses in the manner that they have been losing. It would be a big blow to their season, even though it is early on if that happens. And I just don't see it happening with what they've already established so far. I'm going with the Saints. They win by a field goal or less.
To your point, the Saints lost by 2 to the Eagles and lost by 2 to the Falcons. So, yeah.
3 to the Eagles is 15-12.
I thought it was 17-15. My bad. Okay. Well, thank you. 3 Eagles and I definitely was 2 to the Falcons.
All I know is I got it up on my other screen.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought the score was 17-15. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Not to be contrary, I'm not sure if that offense of the Saints is going to execute well against that defense of the Chiefs. Although I do agree with your point, I don't think this will, their luck of good fortune, the Chiefs, will continue, and they definitely will not be undefeated. I don't think tonight will be their first loss.
Oh,
I don't think it will be. I don't mind being wrong. In fact, being as though my Texans are 4-1 right behind them, it'd be great to see them lose. It won't matter because it's not a conference opponent. But
for number 1 seed, it would. Yeah.
Number 1 seed it would, because a loss is a loss still. But I think that I think the Chiefs will actually still be undefeated after Monday night, but not rooting for it. Thursday night's kick between the Seahawks and the visiting 49ers. 49ers are 2-3. The Seahawks are 3-2. Prime Video will have it. The kickoff is at 8:15. Open the kickoff is at 8:15. 49ers. Now, we've seen them basically be up and down this year. And part of it is injury. It's also part of it scheme. Have the 49ers been figured out by the NFL?
Partially, but you also, if we're going to talk about the Chiefs and the injury bug window, we have to put the 49ers in the same light. Whether it's been due to, knocking the rust off like Ayuk before this past weekend, or the fact that you still don't have CMC and he's out till November because of tendonitis in both legs.
And you had Debo signed off for a couple of weeks. Yeah,
and Debo as well. So you got multiple aspects of your offense that are affected. So with all that being said, I think part of it is they've been figured out, but the other part of it is they have backups playing in starters' places that those starters who have been out make huge impacts to that team. I think that the question that you asked will be better off answered in December if they're still behind and outside of the chase for the playoffs. Not a bad question. I just think that we need to wait until we have more production out of those starters that have been missing before we really write them off quite yet, because it's still a very long season to go.
That was the answer I was hoping you was going to give, actually, because I was thinking the same thing. But I was like, I think it's good to ask that question now.
Oh, yeah.
But I agree with you. This one might have to be revisited if the 49ers end up still being consistently inconsistent. On the other side of things, all right, so the Seahawks, when they win, they seem to win as a team. When they lose, it seems as though they lose and they're all off schedule and off kilter. Uh, it's like, okay, the offense, they can move the ball down the field, but they probably will either not get a key touchdown or get a turnover. The defense, they'll probably give up some touchdowns. The special teams, they might look good one week, they may get their blocks, their kicks blocked. Can the Seahawks put together a consistent game, and can they do it against an opponent like the 49ers?
They can. They just need to be consistent against the 49ers defense. They need to be consistent offensively with Geno Smith, basically with what happened in this past game. The reason why yesterday's game was so close between the Giants and the Seahawks was that 99-yard fumble recovery that Jenkins ran back for a touchdown.
Yeah.
You take 7 more points off from that, they only would have scored 13 points all game. So with that, they can't rely so much on their defense as they have been. They need to get a little bit more balanced with their offensive attack. So putting all that together, can they consistently put a consistent game together? They can, but they need to be able to rely more on their offense than their defense. This game right here on Thursday will be a big, big test to that, because the 49ers are banged up enough to where you should be able to expose that if you are consistent on both sides of the ball. And that we shall see on Thursday night if that is meant to be. So with all that being said, another great question, but it's going to have to be the offense that tips the scales with them being consistent.
And I would love to see how if Geno Smith can test that secondary of the 49ers. That is what, to me, that's what I really want to see in the whole game. So do you have in this one?
In this game right here, I have to go with – I got to go with the 49ers winning this game. I just feel like that I don't see them going 2 games under 500. For our friend, the super fan of this team, I think that it would be best for them to get this win here because of their inconsistencies on offense and even defense at times throughout this season. I think the Seahawks are going to slip to 500 in this game. I could be wrong, but I see it being possible, even though they are at home and have the 12th man. The 49ers win. It's going to be less than 7 points or so. I think it's going to be closer to a field goal decides this game.
To me, I think what dooms the Seahawks is the fact that you got a team that loves to run the ball, and they want to run the ball. They'll be able to do it, and they're coming off an effort where they gave up 175 yards on the ground to a team that really wasn't as good running the ball. And because of that, I think the 49ers will go to 3-3 as well, and I think the Seahawks will drop to 2-3. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think the 49ers will have that one. And then we get to the game that you will care about the most for this weekend. The Washington Commanders at 4-1. They travel, let me see how, it's a long trip, 45 miles north to Baltimore to face off against the 3-2 Ravens at the M&T Bank Stadium. CBS will have that game. Kickoff is at 1 p.m. on Sunday. Now, we talked about the Commanders. The running game has been absolutely stellar. I cannot say enough about Brian Robinson Jr. I think he has been a perfect complement to Jayden Daniels running the ball as well. And I have to say that to you. Just looking from an outsider's perspective of the Commanders, I think that's been a big key. Besides the running game, besides Daniels on the ground and Robinson, how can the Commanders strengthen Jayden Daniels' decision making? Because I've seen it slip the last couple of weeks.
He hasn't been able to spread the ball out as much to his receivers, and that's because of the pressure that's been put on him by the defensive front. The offensive line has been breaking down a little bit in the past couple games.
Yeah.
And it's something that we're accustomed to seeing for several years now. The good news is they've made enough additions over the past offseason that the offensive line isn't what they were, but it's going to be the offensive line that makes or breaks this offense because, Jaden Daniels cannot be running 15, 16 times a game every game and then expect to not get hurt at some point. There's been at least a handful of moments in this past 5 weeks that I've looked at these games, and it looks like he's about to take a really hard shot, but he's elusive enough to get out of the way in a split second or get out of bounds quick enough to where he's out of bounds to where the player doesn't want to take a penalty and plays it smart. But eventually, he's going to play against a player who's not as smart, and he can be 1 foot out of bounds, and there's going to be somebody who's tired of the Jaden Daniels project in Washington and wants to stop it, and it's going to most likely happen when they play a divisional opponent when it makes more of an impact towards who wins that division. So he can do this all he wants to with the runs. I think he needs to be a little bit more careful when he plays the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Giants, these divisional opponents that can really make an impact, not just on their advancement in the season by the end of that game, but the other team's lack of success or success or lack thereof. So when it comes to this right there, I think the biggest thing that they're going to have to do to strengthen Jaden Daniels' decision-making is give him, even if it's a split second more time to make decisions. It's going to have to stem from the offensive line, not breaking down so much to where he has to rely on his legs every time because he wants to be a quarterback first. And in the highlights where he is passing the ball and when he's throwing the ball, they're consistently getting first downs. He just needs a split second more time in the pocket. And I think if the offensive line steps up just a little bit more, and they've stepped up a lot, I don't want to take anything away from them. They've done really well overall in the problems that they've had. The defense of the Browns is the only good thing about the Browns. Okay. And they've got players on there that have been with them since they were much better. So they've taken steps back, like Myles Garrett's older and other players on the defense as well. Yeah. So looking at that, they had their true test with that this past weekend, and they're going to get it again with the Ravens. So with all that being said, you've got to step it up with your offensive line's protection, if at all possible. But to me, that's the answer to that question.
Yeah, I agree. I think if the offensive line, and yes, the offensive line has improved from last year. If they can pass protect with a little bit more motivation as they have run blocking, I think you'll be seeing a lot better effort from Jaden Daniels in the pocket. And I think everybody will be happy with that result. On the other side of the coin, we have, of course, another elusive dual threat quarterback in Lamar Jackson. We have a defense that's opportunistic, especially with the secondary seemingly. Of course, defensive front, they want to always put pressure on you, but they're not as stout up front as they have been in recent years. But seemingly the success of this Ravens team as a whole has been Derrick Henry. When he has gone and been successful, it seems like the team relaxes a bit. And I mean, it relaxes in a good way. And they actually feel as though they can do their job. Will the Ravens continue having to lean on Derrick Henry in the running game?
I think so. Yeah, I think they will, because even in the games that they've lost, like looking back at the Raiders game, they still relied on Derrick Henry enough to where he had 18 carries for like 84 yards in that game. You look at that. I mean, it's tough to think about that, but especially when you're looking at the team they're playing against, the Commanders' pass defense is slightly better than their run defense. So if you're really going to take advantage of the other team, you have to take advantage of what you do the best right now, whether it's between your running back or your quarterback. I mean, your quarterback's one of the best running quarterbacks in the league still. It's still at the top of the league in several statistical categories. So whether it's through Lamar Jackson or it's through Derrick Henry, you just need to establish your run like you have been in order to continue to win games. And if you want to get to 4-2 and knock the Commanders down to 4-2 after this game, that's going to be the biggest way that you're doing it. And that's establishing the run. And it all starts with Derrick Henry. You got to get him 15 to 20 touches in the game, along with a sprinkle of a few other ones by Lamar Jackson, maybe 5 to give them a total of 25 rushing plays just between the two of them, and sprinkle a few more, 5 more or so between another running back or so. 30 running attempts in this game. It's going to be tough for the Commanders to stop all of it because they are a better pass defensive team than they are rushing. I mean, against the Browns this past weekend, they were good on all faces because look how terrible that Browns offense is. But when you look at the other teams they've played who've been slightly competitive, looking at like the Cardinals and the Bengals, who were doing pretty good offensively against them overall or against other teams, the pass defense is on point. The rush defense isn't. If you want to beat the Commanders, you got to establish the run, and you need to start the game by doing so.
That is on point analysis. Yes, I 100% agree with you. I think that is where the Ravens have to do it. They have to start off the bus. We're going to pound that Commanders front four. We're going to pound them, and that's how we're going to start this game. Who do you think is going to win this wonderful tilt on Sunday afternoon?
I want the Commanders to win. I really do.
I do too, actually. I actually do too.
I really want them to win, but and see, throughout several episodes in this show, and even on the Commanders Gridiron Report, I have picked them to lose, and they have surprised me, and I've been happy to be wrong in those moments.
Right.
I don't want to pick them to win here, even though emotionally I want them to win, but my emotional intelligence has improved over the years, and I'm not going to pick them on my emotional pick on this. I feel like based on what we were just talking about, with the Ravens being one of the best in the league with establishing the running game this year between Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, it's going to be the biggest impact of the game. They're going to be able to control the clock. They are at home also, which will go in their favor. Right. I think the game's going to be close, and I think Jaden Daniels does okay. I think that he will improve from the mistakes that he made in this past game, but it's going to come back. It's going to come down to the control of the game through the run. And even though I really like what Brian Robinson Jr. has been doing, if he can do what he's been doing, have 20 plus rushing attempts in the game and 100 yards, the Commanders are winning this game. But the Ravens defense isn't going to give that up though. The Ravens defense, they may have 20 rushing attempts, but he's not going to have the type of yardage and the production based on those rushing attempts. If they do that, I'll be surprised if I'm wrong here, but I'm going to pick the Ravens to win by 7 to 10 points because they're going to establish that run. They're going to establish it early. They're going to control the clock. They're going to have the crowd on their side. There's going to be a lot of things going in their favor, and I feel like the Commanders are going to lose, but they'll be able to hang their hats and keep their heads up high because of the way that they played against a really good team in the Ravens. It was just in the AFC Championship.
All of what you said is what I believe. I do believe you're going to see a better game from Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to learn from – that's another thing I've learned about Jaden Daniels. He seems to learn week to week. So I think he's going to learn from the mistakes he made yesterday, and I think he's going to be better in this upcoming game. I don't think they'll lose because of him. I believe they're going to lose because I think the defensive front of the Commanders just simply can't measure up against the running game of the Ravens. But that is no slight against the Commanders' defensive front. Name me a team that can hang with the Ravens when they decide to run the ball. Heck, I even doubt if the Ravens defensive front can hang with the Ravens when they run the ball. No, the Ravens. I think that's where they're strongest. That's one of the strongest suits in all of football. And yeah, it's going to be competitive. But I think the Ravens will improve to 4-2. The Commanders will drop to 4-2. But if I were a Commanders fan, I would be cheering the fact that they're 4-2. And I'm with you on the pick of your team not winning. I did the same thing this past Sunday with the Texans. I picked them to lose. They won. They made me happy in my being wrong. But there was a reason why. And hey, oh well. But that is your featured attractions this week. Let us know what you think in these wonderful games as to who is going to win each of those contests. But I think we have to award something and somebody else.
Yes!
Total Football Talk.
Oh, yeah!
Oh,
It's that
I see the snow falling. Yes, it is our portion of the show where we award the snowflake of the week. Is for those who seem to melt under the heat. And for Drew Snowflake, I will cede the floor to him.
Even though I don't want this season to end anytime soon, I am looking forward to when we get back into covering spring football, because snow in the spring, it's an awesome feeling to be talking about snowflakes when it's like 90 degrees outside. Okay. But anyway, I digress. I got to go with someone here who has got himself on a high pedestal. Someone who's a part of a nationally televised podcast now, who we refer to as Captain Ayahuasca, and that being Aaron Charles Rodgers. Okay. 29 of 54. You had 54 passing attempts. You only completed 29 of them. And you couldn't even throw for 250 yards. And you only had 2 touchdowns. And you not only had the 2 touchdowns, but you had 3 interceptions as well. And the third one being on the final drive of the game to Stephon Gilmore, who's basically a journeyman now, who you made look like he was playing for the Patriots of the Super Bowl days from 10 years ago. Okay. Now, looking at that, AC Dubs also set a record yesterday. It's first time in his career, illustrious career, that he threw 2 interceptions in the first quarter of a game. Because of that, it's about time you start thinking about retirement, because you're one step closer to it with each and every passing week. Not only that, but you're one step closer to getting your head coach fired, who you already have one awkward hug exchange with. So when you put all that in perspective, Aaron Charles Rodgers, you're about to sign those retirement papers. It's coming, because that game was absolutely ugly, and you haven't done anything in 5 weeks to make me feel otherwise. I'm going with you yet again as a snowflake of the week, and I do not have any other reason to feel any other way.
6 says, forget the ayahuasca. I'm calling him 2 pints, Rodgers, after that mess in North London.
Fish and chips. I saw his comment earlier.
Oh my, well, being a person who is not a fan of Aaron Rodgers myself, I definitely do not disagree with that take, because I feel he has long since worn out his welcome in the NFL, and now the team is going to end up hurting him. Well, I will stay in the division where the Jets reside. I would love to pile on and talk ill about Aaron Rodgers, but I know I will another time in the near future. It made me happy that my partner did it himself. My day was made. But I'm going to go to the game that I watched that involved my team, the Texans. Now, I came really close to wanting to award it to a Texan. I really did. And I was going to award this award to CJ Stroud. And yes, I know you're saying, wait a minute, Cole. He went 20 and 38. He threw for over 300 yards. He had a touchdown. But yeah, the fourth quarter that he played, the pick he threw early in the fourth quarter, which that was a good play, but Stroud telegraphed the pass. The pick early in the fourth quarter, and then the lost fumble off of a rush later in the fourth quarter that was deep within Texas territory, along with Robert Woods wanting to field punts inside the 5 twice in the game. I came very close to awarding it to either those two or to both of them combined. But the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott, and probably the offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, along with them, both said to me, Cole, hold our beers. And so they had the ball with about a minute to go in the game, or a little less than a minute to go in the game. It was deep within their own territory, tied at 20. And then there was a intentional grounding penalty that CJ Stroud drew that put him out of field goal range. Otherwise, that field goal would have happened earlier. First down, second down, third down within their 5, they elect to throw the ball. And that to me was the end of what I had to say is, any mistake you could do, we can do better. And thanks to Sean McDermott and Joe Brady, you all lost the game for your team. So you two are my snowflakes. And I say it with a smile on my face and a song in my heart, because that glaring error led to my team holding the tiebreak advantage over you should you two meet up again in January. So thank you for your mistakes, but a mistake is a mistake anyway. Hold that when you go back to the drawing board and you play OI Hashka Boy. I hope you mess him up next Monday night.
Later, the post game. But coming up next, the 2-minute drill. This is Total Football Talk. Comey Media Incorporated. Creating content magic in the real world.
In a world where chronicles of the past are brought to the streams, whether the content is relatable or completely beyond your realm of life, there is no shadow of a doubt that this show is absolutely full of shenanigans. Get ready for
D. Willie in the evening.
This Sunday at 10:05 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ D Willie 87. Go ahead, hit him up on the Cash App, and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. How about some Willie Bucks?
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commander's Gridiron Report. If you want your commanders to be repped right, well, D. Willie is your man. Commander's Gridiron Report. Every Tuesday at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, 12:05 a.m. Central on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J. Cool.
Where my soldiers, right side, commanders. Where my soldiers, left side, commanders.
Welcome back to Total Football Talk, where we are now engrossed in the 2-minute drill. This is the best of the rest for week 5 now. Wow. No, week 6, I'm sorry. of the 2024 NFL season. And on bye for this week will be the Chiefs, the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Vikings. The Chiefs, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Vikings, they all on byes for this upcoming week. But for the rest, they aren't. And we're going to start with the Sunday morning game, or Sunday afternoon if you're in London. Between the Jaguars and the Bears, this actually is a Bears home game that was given up. NFL Network has the kick. 9:30 a.m. is the start. Who do you have in this one, sir?
I feel like this game can potentially work out to be something along the lines of this. Because you have two teams that are playing pretty underwhelmingly. I mean, yes, the Bears have a positive record, and yes, they have the number 1 overall pick as their quarterback.
Mhm.
However,
Yes, they do.
I feel like they're about to lose to a 1-4 team. I've got the Jaguars winning this game on the road. It's going to be a close one, but I think that the way they won this past weekend could spark something of a fresh air brought into them. And the Bears' front on their offense, that offensive line is still so bad, which is why Caleb Williams has been under pressure as much as he has. And the defense of the Jaguars, when they want to, that defensive front can step it up. I think it happens. I think it happens this weekend in London.
Yeah. And that concludes the toilet bowl. That actually is in London. My bad. I'm sorry. That's poor taste. All right. So the other Sunday games, starting with the 1 p.m. kicks, Fox will have this one. The Packers are 3-2. They host the Cardinals at 2-3. Who do you have in this one?
Based on the way that the Cardinals played this past weekend, bouncing back to an extent to how they played the week prior and getting the win over the 49ers, I feel like it put some new life into them. They are at 500. The Packers were exposed in certain elements this past weekend as well, and I feel like it's going to happen yet again at home. I could be wrong, but I have the Cardinals winning this game in less than 10 points.
The Cardinals winning the game. Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
All right. Well. Okay. Well, I'm thinking Packers, but okay. All right. Cool. CBS, they'll have this 1 p.m. kick. The Titans, they are at 1-3. Coming off their bye, they will host the Colts at 2-3. Who do you have in this one, sir?
Blasphemy emotion will contribute to another. The Titans will fall to 1-4, and the Colts will improve to 500 at 3-3.
Well, I'll say this. I'm rooting for the Titans, which is a rare thing that I'll say. I'm rooting for the Titans simply because this is all division record since they're worse. I'm rooting for the Titans to win, but I agree. Will Levis gives gifts away like you see Santa Claus at Christmas to football teams. So I think he'll do the same. Unfortunately, I believe the Colts will be winning this too.
I mean, regardless if they win, right? If the Colts win, and you have a loss by the Texans, even though we'll get to that in a minute, you're still up by a game.
Oh, that's true.
It's not going to be so bad. I see where you're going for the whole long game picture of the season.
Yeah, long game.
But
yeah.
At the same time, healthy competition is good, and it would be good for you to be a game apart from the Colts, and it would be for you to be 2 games ahead and potentially get too comfortable to where something could happen by the end of the year. I think it would be best if this did happen. So that's where we're going to have to see where that plays out. Just like we disagreed on one earlier, we're going to disagree on this one. Plus, I was supposed to see a Titans blasphemy emotion again because it's more fun to give an analyst on that. And it's more fun to give an analysis on that than it is to give them praise.
Well, believe me, I don't want to give the Titans praise at all. But yeah, again, the fan in me is rooting for the Titans, although I want to barf in a bucket. The analyst to me is definitely saying the Colts will win it. And yeah, I agree with you. Competition is healthy. And speaking of the Texans, who, yes, they right now have the 2-game lead and a game in hand against the Colts. They will be traveling to Boston or the Boston area. They'll be playing the 1-4 Patriots. The Texans are 4-1. CBS has this kick at 1 p.m. Who do you have in this game, sir?
This is why I said what I said in the last take, because the Texans are going to mollywop the Patriots, and you're going to be at 5-1. So it's kind of like donations to a good charity, all right? Give the donation to the Colts this week, all right? And you'll still be 2 games ahead. So let them win. Let the Titans get so far away for your own humor anyway, because you hate the Titans, okay? Let the Colts win. Let the Colts win, because the Texans are going to win anyway when you're playing a team as bad as the Patriots, who especially still have the 5th-string quarterback starting in Jacoby Brissett. So let the man have his moment in Joe Flacco in Indianapolis, and let the Texans win, and the football gods will be great to us, and you still have a 2-game lead. You got to give a little to get a lot, Cole.
He said Jacoby Brissett wasn't even a 2nd stringer. He said he was a 5th stringer. Man, wow. I think the Texans do have it. The only issue I have is I hope they don't just roll their helmets on the field and believe, well, we're 4-1, they're 1-4. This game is in the bag. I'm hoping they come with a heavy level of respect for the Patriots so they can absolutely destroy them once opening kickoff happens.
With CJ Stroud as your leader, I feel like you'll be okay in that department. So
yeah, he's extremely level-headed. I agree with you. Yeah.
There's other teams we could definitely say that about, but definitely good advice to give them. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you're okay and secured in that department.
Yeah, you're right. Because CJ Stroud, very level-headed. You're correct in that assessment. A pretty good game that I really believe. I think it's probably going to be one of the better ones on the 1 p.m. slate. Fox will have the kick. The Saints at 2-2. They host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are 3-2. And who do you have in this NFC South tilt?
Based on, this one's another tough one that we have sometimes, during these shows, because it's going to take the results of the Monday night game for me to truly feel and give a good take on this. However, regardless of that, I feel like in this game, because it's a divisional game between 2 really good teams, and the way that the Buccaneers fell in overtime in the Thursday night contest the previous week, they're due. And I feel like they're going to improve to 4-2 in this game. It's tough to say what the record of the Saints will be at that point, because if they do win in the Monday night prediction that I have against the Chiefs, they'll be 3-2, and both of these teams will be tied going into this game, which will be put even more stakes on it. However, regardless of whether they're at 3-2 or 2-3 coming into this game, I think the Buccaneers are going to have a lot more fuel behind them based on the way they lost to Kirk Cousins and Falcons in overtime in another divisional game. They're not going to want to let 2 games in the division slip, and that's why I have the Bucs winning this game.
I can see that. I think the Bucs are the better team than the Saints. And I think the Saints won't be as motivated as, like you said, the Bucs are. And I think that will play a factor in things. And normally, in for some reason, with at least the last 5 years, the road team has done better. I don't know why that's the case. The Bucs seem to really love playing in the Superdome, and the Saints love to play at Raymond James. I don't understand it. So I think that trend will continue, and the Bucs will have this one. All right. Another Fox 1 p.m. kick. Actually, this will be the last 1 p.m. kick. The Eagles, coming off their bye at 2-2, they host the Browns at 1-4. All right, your thoughts on who do you have in this one?
Both of these teams need to
stop it. Get some help.
Because they absolutely suck right now. Both of them, regardless if one of them's at 500 or not. Okay, I don't care. They both are absolutely terrible. What saved the Eagles from not being below 500 is they just had a bye week. But it's also going to smack them in the rear end, because it doesn't usually work out that well when a team has a bye this early in the year. And I feel the same way for the Lions, too. I'm concerned about that. But the Lions have a better chance of overcoming that than the Eagles do. The Eagles just have a subpar head coach at the same time, and jolly old Saint Nick, who's making the decisions that he makes out there that are costing his team at the same time, especially when you're only running Saquon Barkley 8 times in a game like you did the week prior before you went on by. So that definitely affects the decision-making here.
Oh,
but
God, that's ridiculous.
We went from blasphemy emotion with the Titans. I'm just going to say Deshaun Watson, absolute misery emotion watching him play for the Browns. And I don't even see them getting another win for the rest of this year at this point. I'm going with the Eagles in an ugly game.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up for me. I think the Browns are in a tailspin. They're in a downward spiral. Thank you, 90 Snails. And the Eagles, they need to find some hope of, can Hurts actually play, especially without Smith and Brown, but they might have one or both of them back. But they need to find some sort of hope for Hurts to play well. And hopefully this will be the elixir in the Browns. All right, in the 4 p.m. kicks, or 4 or 5 p.m. kicks, the Broncos, who actually are on a winning streak, wow, they're hosting the divisional rival Chargers. They're coming off a bye at 2-2. The Broncos are 3-2. The kickoff is at 4:05. This game is being mile high. I definitely will say that the Broncos, I believe, will actually push it to 4-2, because it looks like, I think the Chargers have hit a wall a little bit. And although I get what Harbaugh's doing and sort of limiting Herbert in the amount of passes he's throwing, the running game still is not quite established enough, at least to my liking. And I think they need to have that in order to topple the Broncos. All right, your thoughts, sir, and who you think is going to win between the Broncos and the Chargers?
Man, with what Harbaugh's done to turn some things around with the Chargers, it's been nice to see. But at the same time, Broncos have been pulling things out and definitely proving Sean Payton to be the coach that he was hyped up to be while he was with the Saints, and working with very little. Because Bo Nix has definitely been a spark as far as a new breath of fresh air leading the offense as the quarterback. They still need a lot of pieces to upgrade that team to be where they really want to be. And it's very early in the season to put them too high on a pedestal. And I look at what the Chargers did there in the offseason. I feel like they're the better team on paper before we look at the Broncos, because you got Herbert and some other established pieces that were there before they were going downhill with the head coach that shouldn't have had any business being the head coach in Staley before. So with that being said, because you have a competent head coach with some stars on the team, I think it's time to give the Chargers their praise and their shine. And I'm going to go with the road team winning here. I got the Chargers winning this game.
Okay. I can see that. Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility for me either. But I think the Chargers I think they just need to lick their wounds a little bit more. But yeah, I agree with you. Here's the other 4:05 kick. CBS will carry that game as well. The Raiders, coming off a putrid performance, actually against the Broncos, they host the Steelers, and they are coming off of a loss. They're 3-2. The Raiders are 2-3. Of course, this is going to be another one of those old-time rival hyped games. All right. I think the Steelers will come back. I think they'll win this game personally. I don't see anything that the Raiders could do that will counteract that. Your thoughts, sir, and who's going to win this one?
It's another game that could potentially be pretty ugly for a home team, especially for the Steelers coming into town, getting hit hard at home by a team that they should have beat when it comes to the Cowboys. I feel like they're going to have a bad taste in their mouth. The defense is going to play pretty violently, and the Raiders are going to pay for it The Raiders are going to lose at home, and the Steelers are going to improve to 4-1 after this game.
All right. Let's see. Fox will carry a 425 game between the 3-1 Lions going to Arlington to face off against the 3-2 Cowboys. The Lions are coming off a bye. Of course, the Cowboys are coming off of a last-second victory in Pittsburgh. Who do you have in this game, sir?
Regardless of the spark that just came from this past week's win against the Steelers at on the road in Heinz Field, I really like what the Lions are doing, and they've been doing over the past few seasons with the rebuild that they've had since Dan Campbell came to town. They are 3-1. They are coming off a bye week, which can really affect you in multiple ways, whether it be in a positive way or negative way. It could cool you off in some aspects, but I don't feel like this team is going to get affected that much by it, even though they are on the road in Jerry World. I think the Lions come to town and smack that expletive.
I personally think the same, and I think last year's game when the Lions traveled down to Arlington, when they had a 2-point conversion taken off the board, which was good than no good. I personally believe that the Lions haven't forgotten about that. Like, they haven't forgotten about the long losing streak they've had against the Seahawks. I don't think they've forgotten about the game last year in Dallas. I think Dallas is going to become a team that is going to be upset, and Cowboys fan is going to hate the fact that the Lions beat them. I think they'll run up to 4-1. I think the Cowboys will be 3-3. All right, the other 425 game, the Carolina Panthers, the 1-4 team in Charlotte. They'll be in Bank of America Stadium against the division-leading Atlanta Falcons, which they stand at 3-2 at the moment. All right, your thoughts on this game, and who do you see winning it?
The Falcons are going to wax that expletive to the Panthers at home. End quote.
What he said. And NBC, they carry the Sunday night game. The improving Giants at 2-3. They host the woefully starting slow Bengals at 1-4. 8:20 p.m. is the kick. Again, NBC will be carrying it. Who do you have in this one?
If there was a way that both teams could take the wait, there is. Because this game's going to end in like a 3-3 tie. This game's going to suck so bad. Don't stay up and watch this late game because you won't miss anything, whether it's 3-3, 6-6, or 9-9. It's going to be the first time I ever predicted a tie because both teams are just that bad.
What the hey? I don't care who. I don't care which team wins. I'll roll with the tie prediction too. Oh my gosh, that was beautiful. Oh Lord, 3-3, 6-6, 9-9. I don't care either. I think it's going to be a tie as well. Lord have mercy.
3-6-9 expletive so fine.
To the window.
To the wall.
Total football talk.
As long as it's one. That's great.
And now we come to the end of the show called the post game. We give you our thoughts of the previous week in this case, the NFL. And for his final thoughts, I cede the floor to Drew.
Well, I must say this has definitely been yet another great edition of Total Football Talk. Had a great time again today with my man Cole, as I always do each and every week. One of the things I look forward to doing on my free time, which, in the year 2024, I've had even less free time than I have over the years. So definitely a great way to get my week started. Last week, didn't get to have that great start to the week, so I was missing something all week. and to be able to have this today. I appreciate you, my brother, again, for throwing another great slate together. Another great production together, and to be able to, have time in this game of the media and podcast and to spend it with you, and look forward to carrying the message on this Friday with Ryan, and hopefully soon, even though it's tough for you to do it, we can get you on an episode of X, because that's what we call it. We call it X. We do this each and every show. And, with the transitions and stuff that you made for it, definitely enhanced the quality of it. Again, we've said it on that show, and I'll say it here to you. Thank you again, my brother, because not only with the show that you've made with me here, you're still a part of that one there each and every Friday. So it wouldn't be what it is without you. It always takes time to build things. We're in this for the long game. There's people that get lucky and get tens and thousands of views on content. A lot of them have to take half their clothes off to get it. But we are giving you content and quality content here. And when we make these into shorts, when I actually have time to make shorts, it shows. And that's how we get even more views on it. And I've, between Commander's Gridiron Report, this In or Out Sports Debate, it's all proven statistically within all that. I've given so much football take on this show that I'm going to go a little bit off the rails, but in a good way with my final take. We've had, a lot of great football in the past 5 weeks. We've had some ugly football as well, but as a whole, 3/4 of the league has played pretty well and kept us all interested within these games. Even teams that were playing terrible in the past couple of years, we've been getting great positive production out of them. It's been nice to see, especially out of the Commanders, which, it was tough doing a show on a team that was 4-13 last year, but I was there each and every week. Don't you forget that. I don't ever want to hear anybody say about me being on a bandwagon, because I was with that team during the toughest of times, the hard times, as Dusty Rose, the late, great American Dream would say. So don't make me start doing the tough times, hard times promo. But right here and now, again, it's episode 58 of Total Football Talk. We're only a couple weeks away from 60 episodes. We've done this 58 consecutive weeks, whether it's been just me or just Cole or both of us with guests on here. 58 consecutive weeks. It's a testament to how much we love the engagement from the fans during the show, whether it's live or in, syndication in the replay or in the moment. So shout out to Cole. Shout out to all of you in the chat. Shout out to all of you in the replay chat as well, because this is for you, the fans. Hook us all up if you could. If you have, great. If you haven't, please hook us up with the like, share, and subscribe to whatever channel you're watching this on, and help get some other eyes on it, because in time we would like to be premier source for football discussions out here in these streams.
True with the mic drop. Wow. And I totally appreciate the compliment, sir. Thank you, sir. And you and Ryan are doing your thing, and hopefully one of these days I will make my way to be in the midst of the two of you. Enjoy the two of you, and be great to be on.
Oh, can we get you to do this though, so I can take a clip out with me?
Yes, Lord. Oh my goodness. I love you guys. I love you, Drew.
Love you too, bro.
When I was watching last night, the NBC's coverage of the 90-minute delay of the Sunday night game between the Cowboys and the Steelers, I was like, I'm interested to see what people are saying. And so as I was perusing social media, I got a chance to witness the stupid machismo takes. Some actually coming from women. Some saying, well, how on the nerve is the NFL delaying this game because of rain? And because of it, they must be blank cats. You know what he said, because he didn't say cats. Anyway, the thought of, well, they're not canceling, but they're postponing this game because of rain. You got to be kidding me. And then, of course, I heard another take of, well, back in the days, they would dare not cancel a game because of rain. I said, well, they still today wouldn't cancel the game because of rain or sleet or snow or fog or heat or blizzards. They would for lightning, though. And the reason being, it is safer to do the sport sans lightning. And you don't know when it's going to strike or where or even how. But it is better to be safe than sorry, because you don't see human beings get fried or die from rain or from snow or from sleet. You may have from heat, but not necessarily from blizzards. And, I just feel the need to impart upon all of you. If you're going to have these machismo takes, do it with the understanding of how they roll. Now, how it does happen. Whenever there is a disturbance that comes into any stadium, any area, if they sense it, if they sense even within the vicinity of the stadium that a lightning strike can happen, they'll postpone the game. That's the only time I've ever seen them postpone a game. I've heard them talk about postponing games due to ice storms, and I think they've only done it once. And it was not necessarily because they weren't sure the game could be played. It was, can they actually make it to the stadium? And they wanted to appease the local area in whatever state of emergency protocol was given. So we can have these big time machismo takes, but you got to understand something. These players are human beings. And just because your fantasy football or parlay or bet isn't going to satisfy you if they were to not play, it does not mean that for your amusement that these players should risk their lives even further than they already do to begin with, to subject them to lightning strikes, lightning storms, and thunder. They're human beings. It's time that we start treating these football players like human beings. You definitely want to, when you want to climb into their pockets and say, well, this guy's making too much. And if I were to be a football player, I don't know if I would make that much. Who knows? But you want to climb into their pockets. You want to make them human that way, but you want to make them superhuman because they can play in any condition. Well, they play in just about every other one. There's only one where I would see them stop it altogether, and that would be lightning. So understand, NFL, even college football, even high school, from what I understand, they won't cancel the game due to snow or sleet or rain or heat or fog. And I have seen games where all of those have taken place. But I have seen on all levels games postponed due to lightning. The NFL, as big and bad and bold and as rich as they are, they do not want to risk those lawsuits. And I don't blame them. Plus, those players are human beings. Let's start treating them as such and start treating them like commodities, because they are not there for your amusement. They are there because they perform something better than 99.9% of all of us. And we just so happen to like what they do, like how they approach things, and like what we see. Let them enjoy it as human beings, just like you would want to enjoy the things that you want as human beings.
As long as it's one.
I went to go buy one yesterday, but I wasn't able to look at it tomorrow.
Oh, that's great.
So
I love it.
actually, I was getting to
I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
All right. If you want to see Drew on any social media platform out there, here it is. On Instagram, it's _media. On X, it's _media as well. For TikTok, is _Sertoba. And on YouTube, it is Sertoba Media. And if you want to reach out to yours truly, all you have to do is go into flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson. That's flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson. Well, on behalf of Drew, I thank you for liking, for sharing, for subscribing, and for hitting that notification bell so you can catch all content that emanates from the Sertoba Media YouTube channel or the Comey Media YouTube channel. And we hope that you enjoy everything that we put forth.
Oh, yeah.
For Drew Willingham, I'm Cole Johnson here to say in parting, as we always do. In life, just like a tackle, keep your head up. And always remember, you got to play until the whistle blows.
And as always, stay safe out there in these fathering streets.
So long, everybody.